Good morning, beautiful people. I hope that you guys are having, well, it's 1 o'clock in the morning here. I hope that you have an amazing day because you're probably asleep. But President Trump, peak Hegseth, and other news today. President Trump speaks at an affordable care event. I'll start there. We have some things to talk about, so I'll get right into it. Okay, but have, have a good day.
Country. And for decades, Americans paid the highest drug prices anywhere in the world by far. But under the most favored nation agreements I negotiated, we now pay the lowest price paid for anybody in any country.
Good
We
morning,
went from the
Timothy
highest
Doc.
to
I
the
need a
lowest.
clip
And
of
I
that.
think outside of maybe a cure
Morning,
itself,
Doc.
it's the biggest thing to happen to healthcare and everything having to do with medical in any way, shape, or form. There's never been anything like this. We think of it. We went from the most expensive to the least expensive. So
Have a
we've
couple
slashed the
hours
price of
with you guys
dozens
today.
of commonly used prescription drugs by differences of 400, 500, and even 600%. In my first term, I got it down 1/8 of 1%. It's the first time in 28 years it went down 1/8 of one, and now we're talking about 4, 5, and 6,
Good
and even
morning, Kaiser.
700%, including for weight loss drugs, fertility treatments, insulin, and much, much more. Since that launch in February, TrumpRx.gov has already been visited more than 10 million times and has saved American consumers over $400 million already. And it's really the hottest thing in medicine. It's been amazing. I asked Dr. Oz, how's it doing? Bobby was there. He said, nobody's ever seen anything like this. So it's great. People are saving a lot of money. Over the next 10 years, the Council of Economic Advisors estimates that our most favored nation drug policies will save Americans over $500 billion.
How are you, sir?
And this has been the greatest breakthrough in lowering healthcare costs in modern history. But we're just sort of getting started, actually, because we have a lot more to come. So today I'm thrilled to announce that we're increasing the number of drugs available on TrumpRx by nearly 7 times, adding over 600 affordable generics to the website, working with industry partners. Cost-effective generic drugs are often available at just a tiny fraction of the price of their brand name equivalents. And in theory, they're the same thing. Sometimes they're better with the same dosage, the same effectiveness, and the same active ingredients, yet many consumers do not think to ask for them. They don't know about them. By incorporating this massive catalog of low-cost generics at TrumpRx.gov, consumers will now have one source to ensure that they're getting the lowest possible cost on their prescription. So they have a real option now. Today, they have something that they've never had before. They've never had anything like this or even close. With these additions, TrumpRx will feature the best and lowest prices on prescriptions used by tens of millions of Americans already. And in some cases, the discounted generics available through TrumpRx may be offered at an even lower cash price than the out-of-pocket insurance cost, which has always been the lowest, but we're going to be lower. This means that the TrumpRx.gov should always be your first stop before you go to the pharmacy to pick up your prescription. And you'll certainly be checking on your pharmacy by doing this. And at a minimum, you'll know what you're supposed to be paying. I want to thank the leaders of several major pharmacies and generic drug makers who are partnering with us on this effort, including the co-founder of Cost Plus Drugs, Mark Cuban. Mark, thank you very much. Mark, looking good, Mark. Come here, Mark.
That you're talking about, where is it? I can't find it.
We have the same thing, one thing in common. We want to make people better and keep them wealthy, right? Good to be with you. Vice President of Amazon Pharmacy, Tanvi Patel. Thank you very much.
My friend.
And the president of RX Marketplace at Good RX, Aaron Crittenden. Aaron, thank you very much. Great job you're doing. With these companies as partners, we're also getting and adding new tools to take over websites which will connect patients with the lowest price pharmacy right in their own neighborhood, or alternatively give them the option of getting a discounted prescription shipped straight to their door. They can have it delivered right to their front door. This will provide American consumers with new options, more savings, and unprecedented price transparency, putting billions and billions of dollars back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. What a difference it's going to make at the end of a week. For generations, drug prices have only gone up, and under my administration, for the first time in history, drug prices are coming down, and they are coming down very, very dramatically and substantially. Politicians from both parties promised for decades to make health care more affordable, but they all failed, every single one of them. And when they thought they had it, they couldn't get other countries to go along. I got all the other countries to come along. I said, you don't come along, we're going to tariff you. And they all said, we'd love to come along, sir. But I'm actually getting it done, and I don't care how I do it. I got to get it done for the people. I want to thank the incredible team behind this historic accomplishment, including Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Bobby, Administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz. What a team this is. And Chief Counselor of Health and Human Services, Chris Klump. And I also especially have to thank the genius behind the world-class website that will soon be serving hundreds of millions of Americans, Airbnb co-founder and Chief Design Officer of the United States, Joe Gebbia, who's really amazing, and Ed Korstein, and the team at the National Design Studio, which is as good as you get. Under my America by Design executive order, Joe and his design team have been working to make your government more beautiful, more modern, convenient, and effective. In addition to the Trump RX website, they've built the amazing experience behind TrumpAccounts.gov and the new food pyramid, Freedom 250, and much more. They're doing a job for the country like I can say design-wise nobody has ever seen. So, Joe, please show us how Trump RX is bringing the modern face to healthcare and really helping us to save lots of money and lots of lives. Joe, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. In just months, Trump RX has accomplished what Washington said couldn't be done. Those numbers you shared represent huge savings at real scale for real Americans. And none of this would be possible without your leadership and your belief that Americans deserve better health. So today's great announcements of more drugs, more pharmacies, and home delivery are making healthcare simpler and smarter for Americans. Let's go live to the new Trump RX experience. So that $400 million saved for Americans, that means better living and less stress for millions of families. So let's browse some of those medications. Immediately, you'll see a new section called Presidential Deals. These are some of the most affordable brand name drugs in America, made possible thanks to our president's legendary deal making. So let's take a look at a few of these. This is Foundayo, the new GLP-1 pill, 77% off. This is the insulin medication, 72% off. This is Trulicity, 61% off. These are life-changing savings for millions of Americans. Now, search also got smarter too. You can now look up brand name drugs and see the generic version. Let's try a brand drug named Glucophage. It's for diabetes and it costs around $20. So search now shows the lower cost option, Metformin. Metformin has the same active ingredients, but now watch this. The price, $8.42. So you found an affordable price. Now where do you get it? You can find your trusted pharmacy in one search. Watch how easy this is. I'll use mine. Capsule Pharmacy. Boom, there it is. Now, we also created another way to find the best price, introducing Map Search. For the first time, you can see chain and local independent pharmacies on the same map. So here's my location. I see an option here at a pharmacy for $18, and a block away, $8.42. Now you can compare for the best medicine prices, as easy as it is to compare hotels or Airbnbs or baseball tickets. This is simple, transparent healthcare pricing. So when I find what I'm looking for, I take this coupon, show it to the pharmacist, and I get the Trump RX price. That simplicity is why Trump RX has taken off nationwide. Okay, there's one more thing. Today, we added new partners for fast home prescription delivery. I can actually get this medicine to my door in a day or so. So from search to savings to satisfaction, this is healthcare built for modern life. You compare prices on flights. Why not medicine? Don't just fill your prescription. Trump or exit. Because the strongest nation on earth, America, starts with the healthiest people on earth. Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you, Joe. Great job. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Really amazing the job you've done. And so quickly now, I'd like to ask Secretary Kennedy to say a few words, and Dr. Oz and Mark Cuban and Chris Klump. And we'll take a couple of questions maybe at the end. Thank you. Bobby, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The epidemic of chronic disease in this country is now existential. If you include my agency plus Social Security and the VA, Americans now spend 48 cents out of every dollar that we spend in federal taxes now go to healthcare. 90% of that is for chronic disease. And those costs are increasing at 2% at greater speed than the GDP. In addition to that, it poses an existential threat to our national security. 77% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. President Trump has pledged to end the chronic disease epidemic, but in the meantime, many people need medications to treat their chronic disease. And President Trump has asked us to make our country, the most affordable medication in the world, and he succeeded in doing that. And I want to say one last thing. President Bush promised to do this. President Clinton promised to do it. President Biden promised to do it. President Obama promised to do it. President Trump actually got it done. And it's an extraordinary accomplishment. It's an extraordinary legacy for him, and it's a gift to the American people. And I want to thank you again for your vision and for your determination.
This is yet another example of this administration, of the president's leadership, making life more affordable. And it's in a particularly important arena because almost 1 in 3 Americans, when they go to a drugstore, cannot afford to pick up the medications that their doctor prescribed for them. And part of the reason for that, which the president recognized early on and pushed hard until it got done, because it was a force of his personality that allowed us to go to all the major pharmaceutical companies representing the vast majority of the marketplace of branded drugs in America. But what he realized was we're paying 3 times more for the exact same drugs made in the same facilities, often in this country, than people overseas are paying for those exact same drugs. Whether it's weight loss drugs, fertility drugs, you name it, we're overpaying for it. President wanted that stopped. He wanted it stopped now. And so he did it. The most favored nation drug pricing approach works using a variety of techniques that he outlined, but we needed to make sure you had an ability to access these drugs. TrumpRx.gov is a phenomenon. Over 10 million people have visited the site. It is the fastest site of its kind I've ever seen. As a physician who's used to looking at medications and having no idea what the patient will pay, it's as transparent as you just saw, built by the fantastic team with Joe Gebbia. They started with dozens of medications, Mr. President, which is the number of medications that had been negotiated by Chris Klump and the team at HHS. Today, 601 more medications were added, 601 more. As the president said, 7 times more drugs are now in this list, which means something really important. You should not buy a drug in America without first checking the best transparency site ever created for medications to make sure you're not being taken advantage of. You wouldn't go grocery shopping without knowing prices. You wouldn't buy a car without knowing prices, lease an apartment or anything else. You shouldn't do it with the medications that could save your life. We believe that more than half of all the prescription interactions in America are now going to be revealed on Trump RX. If you wish to use the site in any capacity, this is the time to start. It's a technological feat. It's created transparency with no middlemen. Just what the president promised. And for that reason, we ask you today to go look at the site, TrumpRx.gov. Ask us to put you on our mailing list. So when the team at the National Design Studio wants to contact you about new medications that are being offered, new ways for you to save money, new ways for you to make health more affordable, so your zip code doesn't determine your health, you'll have TrumpRx.gov to go to. Mark Cuban has been an outspoken advocate for more transparency in medications. He built a business around it, and he's one of the companies that's joining us now to put their products on TrumpRx.gov. Mark?
Thank you for having me, Mr. President. I think other than you, I've been the biggest proponent of TrumpRx.com. And the reason for that is Republicans want cheaper drugs, independents want cheaper drugs, Democrats want cheaper drugs, and together, I think we're going to do something special. What makes Cost Plus Drugs different is that when you click through TrumpRx to our site, not only will you see a great price, but you'll see our actual cost and that we only mark it up 15%. And what makes this incredible, Mr. President, all the volume and all the people that are going to come from the site, as our volumes go up, our costs go down, which means we'll be ending up charging less to people over a period of time. So this is a special announcement. This is a special partnership. 559 of those drugs are ours. So we're really excited to be part of this. Thank you so much for having me. And I'll turn it over to Chris Klopp. Thank you.
So you've just heard about the addition of generic medications on TrumpRx, which is fantastic. TrumpRx is now the true single source of truth for the lowest prices for American families on their prescription medications. But what matters even more is what comes next. So we are on an irreversible trajectory. An American family right now taking a GLP-1 will save this year, right now, about $1,800 less than they would have 4 months ago before the advent of TrumpRx.gov. An American family trying to conceive and needing fertility medications will save nearly $6,000 per live birth right now, thanks to TrumpRx.gov. That's nearly $5 billion going to the pockets of hopeful parents over the next decade. So how do we achieve this? By proving that in America, you can do well by doing good. TrumpRx has created a revolutionary vehicle for a true public-private partnership. Private innovators are stepping up to the plate, and they're doing it not just because it's the right business decision, but it's the right moral decision. So to accelerate this process, we will continue focusing on three things, the same three things we talked about you in our last conversation on most favored nation pricing led by the president. First, we continue to bring additional industry partners on board. Last time we had a conversation with you about MFN, we put out a call to small and mid-sized biotechnology manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies to come sit with us to make their product portfolios available at MFN prices. We said that we would be fair and we would be reasonable, and the industry has answered that call. We've been inundated with demand for discussions to ensure that every American family can continue to access MFN prices, not just for the companies that have been negotiated, but for the many that are yet to come. Number two, as the president mentioned, we are continuing to negotiate international trade agreements. Those are well underway, working lockstep with our partners at Trade and at Commerce. And number three, legislation. We are continuing discussions on the Hill with Congress to ensure that the president's great healthcare plan lasts for decades to come, guaranteeing greater affordability, greater accountability, greater transparency for every American family. It turns out, as Mark said, there is appetite on both sides of the aisle to make progress on this important point. When a parent goes to the pharmacy, they're not thinking about political ideology. They're thinking about what's best for their family. And today, leaders across the spectrum, irrespective of their party, are standing together because Americans demand affordable health care, and it's an American imperative. This president has set us on a course to permanently benefit from lower drug prices as a country. The foundation is built, the market is engaged, the future is affordable, and I yield the podium back to the man who made all this possible. Thank you, Mr. President.
Would you like to say something? You're over there. You look so beautiful and nice. You two, come on over here. Just say a couple of words about.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for having Amazon here today. It's really great to work with the administration and the NDS on building TrumpRx at Amazon Pharmacy. It's been our mission to build a pharmacy with price transparency from day one. And it's been our mission to make sure that Americans who need their medications know how much they're going to pay out of pocket for brand or generic medications. It's what we're built around, whether you're paying cash or insurance. And we look forward to continuing to innovate on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck with it.
I'm going to move this up just slightly. Thank you for having us on behalf of GoodRx. Look, we have shared mission as everyone up here to deliver healthcare that's affordable to every American. We couldn't be prouder by what you're doing and be part of it. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions of these brilliant people? Yeah, please go ahead. Go ahead. Yes. The white. Yes.
Mr. President, on the IRS,
They're giving a briefing on it a little while at the mosque. They're giving a briefing, and
President
it's a
Trump.
terrible situation. I've been given some early updates, but we're going to be going back and looking at it very strongly. Yeah, please.
Justice Fund created $1.7 billion
Can you speak a
that the
little bit about
IRS
your
is now
post
going
on
to.
Wait, excuse me.
Can you speak a little bit about your post on Truth Social on Iran and what was the decision that why you didn't attack it?
Well, other countries have come to me and they've said we were getting ready to do a very major attack tomorrow. I put it off for a little while, hopefully, maybe forever, but possibly for a little while, because we've had very big discussions with Iran, and we'll see what they amount to. I was asked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and some others if we could put it off for 2 or 3 days, a short period of time, because they think that they are getting very close to making a deal. And if we can do that, where there's no nuclear weapon going into the hands of Iran, I think, and if they're satisfied, we will be probably satisfied also. We've informed Israel. We've informed other people in the Middle East that have been involved with us. And, it's a very positive development, but we'll see whether or not it amounts to anything. We've had periods of time where we thought pretty much getting close to making a deal, and didn't work out. But this is a little bit different. Now, we're ready going tomorrow, very big, and not something I wanted to do, but we have no choice because we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Yeah.
The Justice Department has this new fund that was announced today, $1.7 billion.
Yeah.
Why should taxpayers pay for the January 6th?
Well, it's been very well received. I have to tell you, I know very little about it. I wasn't involved in the whole creation of it and the negotiation. But this is reimbursing people that were horribly treated. It's anti-weaponization. They've been weaponized. They've been, in some cases, imprisoned wrongly. They paid legal fees that they didn't have. They've gone bankrupt. Their lives have been destroyed. And they turn out to be right. I mean, it was a terrible period of time in the history of our country. And they worked on it. I know the Justice Department, it's really been working on it very hard. There's been numerous other occasions over the years where things like this have been done. But these were people that were weaponized and really treated brutally by a system that was so corrupt, with corrupt people running it, and they're getting reimbursed for their legal fees and the other things that they had to suffer. Yeah, please. Daniel, go ahead. Hold it, Daniel, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's pretty remarkable seeing you and Mark Cuban up there, and the fact that obviously Mark endorsed Kamala Harris back in 2021.
Well, he made a mistake. It was a big mistake.
What does this say about what you two are building here?
Well, it says we love people. We love our country. He's got a good company, and he's going to do a lot of business with this. And I'm going to get drugs out through Amazon, through the whole group, and we're going to get drugs out. And Mark wanted to be a part of it. And I think Mark was very gracious. He said, this is something that really works. First time you've seen it. And he had to believe that if he said it about me. You have to understand that. But look, I think I have a lot of respect for Mark, frankly, and I always have.
And then, sir,
Go ahead, Ebola. Ebola, you said Ebola.
Yeah. Should Americans be concerned about Ebola?
I'm concerned about everything, but certainly am. I think that, it's been confined right now to Africa, and but it's something that has had a breakout. I could ask Bobby or Oz to say a couple of words about it if you'd like. Want to do that?
I think Heidi Overton is going to come up and give us a few words here. Dr. Overton.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Today, the CDC held a press briefing that provided a lot of the answers and information, but we have stood up a full interagency response. The Department of State, the CDC, the Department of War, everyone is fully involved in tracking. Today, we do have an announced today at the press briefing. There is an American that is symptomatic and has tested positive for it's the Bundibugyo virus, a strain of Ebola. That American, as well as 6 other high-risk contacts, are going to be taken out of that region and taken to Germany. We want to thank our German counterparts. That is an internationally recognized location for viral hemorrhagic fever treatments. So we're very grateful that they would take them. It's a significantly shorter flight time for Americans to receive treatment there in Germany. For all other Americans, we have issued travel warnings. We have We have instituted just today entry restrictions for non-U.S. citizens that are that have been in the region in the past 21 days. So in Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and South Sudan. So very serious measures that have been taken. We are working to communicate very frequently with everyone. Your question was, should Americans be worried? Right now, there are no cases of Ebola in America. We want to keep it that way, and we are doing everything we can to support Americans in the region. Thank you, Mr. President.
President Trump over here. President Trump.
Go ahead, on Iran.
Yes, to follow up on Iran. Other countries have done this before. They have asked you to change course in order to they dangled a peace deal in front of you saying one was coming. Nothing has come into fruition. You mentioned this.
Well, a lot's come into fruition. We've taken a country that was going to have a nuclear weapon, and we've virtually destroyed its military. They have no navy. They have no air force. They've been virtually destroyed militarily. That's a lot. That's a big. We could leave right now. It would take them 25 years to rebuild. And the last thing they're thinking about, I think, is nuclear. Now they have to put it down in writing. But when you say nothing, we've totally destroyed. Excuse me, from CNN. We've totally destroyed their military. We've destroyed their leadership. As you know, their leaders are gone. Their leaders are gone at the first level. The second level, we're dealing with half of the third level. And I think we've made a lot of progress. And it's very simple. You know, we don't want to go through this. We had the greatest economy ever. We still do. The stock market at a brand new high a little while ago. I never thought that was going to happen. We had to make the excursion. You know, we hit 50,000 on the Dow. We hit 7,000 on the S&P, and everyone said that couldn't be done within my 4 years. It would be too big. Well, we did it in my first year. And then I called Scott and Howard. I called them all into my office. I say, we're going to take a little excursion down to the Middle East, and we're going to confront Iran because they are desperate to have a nuclear weapon. And the only reason they want it is to use it. And I said, I hate to do this because we're doing so well, but this is the most important thing we can do. We can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. So we did that. And when we did that, we were met with a little force, and we ended up destroying them. We now have a tremendous, we built really a steel wall where no boats, the blockade, where no boats are able to, not one boat has been able to get through our blockade. Look, our military is the greatest military anywhere in the world. I just left China, and I will say President Xi was very, very complimentary of our military. He was amazed, actually, at our military. We have the greatest military in the world. We're not going to let Iran have a nuclear weapon. So I was called by these three countries, plus others, and they're dealing directly with our people and right now Iran. And there seems to be a very good chance that they can work something out. If we can do that without bombing the hell out of them, I'd be very happy. Please.
Sir, on weaponization, I have a question on weaponization. Do you believe that people who committed violence against Capitol Hill police officers on January 6th should be eligible for compensation from this DOJ fund? And are you or your family members going to be seeking compensation from that fund?
It'll all be dependent on a committee. A committee's being set up of very talented people, very highly respected people. I think it's a committee of 5. And again, I didn't do this deal. It was told to me yesterday. They said they're doing something. I do believe there has to be compensation for people that were destroyed. You have families absolutely destroyed, and it's all going to be determined by a committee of 4 or 5 people that are respected and very brilliant at what they do. Yeah, please. Go ahead, please. No, one at a time, please. In the blue, yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
In the blue, yes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. On election integrity, so a lot of Republicans, including you, are speaking out against a massive mail-in ballot era in Maryland.
Yeah, terrible.
How concerned are you about election integrity as Americans are heading into the midterms?
I'm very concerned about it. I'm very concerned about mail-in ballots. We're the only country in the world that's doing mail-in ballots, and a mail-in ballot is, by just the nature of it, it's going to be corrupt. So many people handle it. You go into a well-run voting booth and a certain state, you know, we'll pick a state, but you go into, and I mean, they look, even me, I went in Florida and went to vote, and they said, sir, I hate to do it. I'm so embarrassed. Could I see your identification? I said, really? Do you really want to do that? Please, sir. I'll lose my job if I don't do it. I was very proud to hand her identification and everything else. I mean, you want to have proof of citizenship. You want to have a voter ID. You want to have all these things. But to me, maybe the worst of all is the mail-in ballots where They come in. So as you know, in Maryland, 500,000 fake ballots were sent out. When they were caught, they said, oh, we'll pull them back. And they issued 500,000 new ballots. And as you know, they never got the original ballots back. So there are 1 million ballots out there. Many of them went to Democrats, and it's a very serious thing. And I'll tell you, I've looked at Maryland for a long time, and I know Maryland pretty well. And I was told that it's automatically a Democrat state. And I don't believe that, because I think I did really well there, and I don't believe it. But they issued, as you just got caught recently, 500,000 ballots, illegal ballots were sent out, and they were totally fraudulent. And then they said, oh, we'll pull them back. Well, they didn't pull them back, and they have 500,000 new ballots go. So what happens to the original? Are they going to come in, and are they going to come in and infect our system? So it's a very, very serious thing that's happened. And I've asked the law enforcement to look at it very, very strenuously. I want to thank you all. We're so proud of it. And I want to thank Bobby and Oz and Mark and all of the people that are here. And Joe, great job. You are really something. I heard about you for a long time, and now you're doing something that's more important than anything you've ever done. And you've done some beauties. Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
How did you guys not like that? Trump RX. Let's. Oh no, we're not going here. Let's go to no, we're not doing. No, where did I let that go? I'm going to Pete Hegseth next. I'm not going to play all of this one, even though I really like Pete Hegseth, but the sound for me is not quite there. So I'll give you guys a here. Let me just. Yeah, guys, or just catch my attention if you want one. Let me set this clip up for you guys. So again, not my favorite with the audio, but try to just listen to the message, okay? I got you. Let's see where I started. Let's see here.
Out of high school, I wasn't 22 at a
You know what I
college.
mean?
I was
It's like
full grown
a
from a
robot.
dairy farm.
Not budging.
Politicians up there who never carried a rifle in combat make decisions about young Americans who would, and that's not acceptable, because leadership matters, culture matters, courage at the top matters, and that's why President Trump's leadership matters. That's why Pete Hegseth's leadership matters.
You want
it
one,
sends a
Creighton?
message to our enemies. America's done apologizing for its strength. America's done weakening itself from within. America's done putting politics ahead of national security. Under President Trump, we're rebuilding fighting strength, and we are returning the principles that made our nation the most feared and respected force on earth to maintain peace and prosperity. So thank you for coming for our men and women in uniform and their families. And thank you for helping restore pride, strength, and confidence in the United States military. And to everyone here today, thank you for believing in this nation. You're patriots. I'm going to tell you, Steve will tell you, SEAL Team 6, Area 51, that's not the secret weapon. You are. You patriots are the secret weapon of this great nation. Thank you for what you do. For standing with President Trump, Pete Hegseth, as we lead our nation back to prominence. God bless our troops. God bless our veterans. God bless our families, and continue to God bless America. Thank you for coming today.
This was a lot longer than I couldn't hear the audio, you guys. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you so much.
Well, folks, I think y'all all agree the second busiest guy in the world right now to President Trump is Pete Hegseth. His plate is full, but he's got a great team under him. It is my pleasure to introduce a fellow Ranger here today to little old Kentucky. Thank you for coming, Pete. We are honored by your presence here today, and we look forward to your remarks. And all that to say, I really enjoyed the time up here with you today, and I look forward to talking with you folks more. Thank you.
Oh no, not the audio. Wait, no music. No music.
By the way, you got one thing wrong. I'm not Ranger qualified. You are. So I'm just an Army infantryman. You got me on every level. And we're so grateful for your service. But the truth is, that combination tells us a lot about Ed. This is not a guy who chased comfort. This is a man who volunteered for the hardest assignments, surrounds himself with warriors, and led from the front when the stakes were life and death. And trust me, men don't follow you in those environments because you have good talking points. They follow you because you've earned their trust. They follow you because you perform under pressure. They follow you when things get dangerous and chaotic. You move toward the mission instead of away from it. And America desperately needs even more of that leadership right now. Now, I do have to say this. I had a chance to look over Ed's military record, and it's quite impressive. Multiple Bronze Stars, 2 presidential unit citations. I had a chance to give one to the USS Ford, returning just a couple days ago. They're rare. It's the Navy Cross of unit citations. It's impressive. But unlike politicians in Washington, you don't get those for podcasting or pontificating. And you don't get medals like that for explaining why everybody else is wrong. You earn them through leadership and through sacrifice and performance under pressure. All of that matters. Because America is starving for those types of leaders. And after spending years around soldiers and Marines and SEALs and Rangers and medics and airmen and infantrymen, you learn something really quickly from the best of America. There's a massive difference between those who talk about leadership and people who actually lead. Trust me, we already have plenty of talkers in DC. Plenty of consultants, plenty of bureaucrats, plenty of career politicians who've never carried a responsibility heavier than a committee hearing. Not enough warfighters. Not enough men who've actually had to make those hard decisions under pressure. Not enough leaders who understanding service before self, about being on a team, about leading and about following. And that's why this race matters. And that's why I'm proud here to stand with Ed Galrine. Because he led warriors in combat. He led at the very highest levels of special operations. He served with distinction as a Navy SEAL and rose into leadership within the elite ranks of SEAL Team 6, one of the most demanding combat organizations on planet Earth. I've had a chance to see firsthand what those men do. It's extraordinary, and it's not made for the vast majority of Americans. Ed's is not a manufactured politician. He's not a social media celebrity trying to be a conservative fighter. He's not someone who discovered patriotism because a pollster told him it was popular. You don't get what he has by accident. You don't get there because you've mastered the language of Washington social circles. You get there because men trust you with their lives. You get there because when things get dangerous and chaotic, you move toward the mission instead of away from it. And right now, America needs that kind of leadership right alongside President Trump. President Trump needs those kinds of reinforcements. Because let's be honest about where we are. Under Joe Biden, Washington rewarded weakness. Corporate America cowered to the woke mob. Politicians served themselves, as politicians often do. And while all this is happening, the people who actually fight America's wars were watching their institution, the one they loved so much, consumed with nonsense. Woke trainings, political indoctrination, diversity quotas, climate seminars, pronouns, dudes in dresses. I'm not kidding. Standards were lowered, troops were undercut. We need more of that t-shirt right there. I identify as American. Americans watched our military become more concerned with not offending activists than preparing warriors to win wars. I've said that for years. America cannot afford a woke or weak military. We need a lethal and ready military. We need warfighters. We have ended the war on warriors. President Trump told me when he first offered me this job, he said, "Pete, you're gonna have to be tough as shit." Sorry. He did. You ready? They're gonna come after you. And boy, was he right. He was right. But that's also what Ed represents. A warfighter, a man forged through service. And here's the thing about men who come from that kind of world, they don't scare easily. Washington doesn't intimidate them. The media doesn't intimidate them. The Twitter mob doesn't intimidate them. Because after you've led men in life and death situations, the games that are played inside the Beltway start looking pretty small. Now contrast that with what we've gotten from Tom Massey. At some point, being against everything becomes an excuse for accomplishing nothing. At some point, constant obstruction is not leadership, it's just commentary. It's obstruction. President Trump does not need more people in Washington who are trying to make a point, especially from his own party. He needs people willing to help him win, to vote with him when it matters the most. And too often, Thomas Massey has acted like his job is to stand apart from the movement that President Trump leads instead of strengthening it. When President Trump needs backup, Massey wants to debate process. When the movement needs unity, especially at the biggest moments, Massey's willing to vote with Democrats. When conservatives are fighting the most radical left in American history, too often Massey's instinct is to throw elbows at fellow Republicans instead of the people who are destroying our country or want to destroy our country. And there's one man standing in their way, and it's President Trump. And President Trump needs reinforcements. And that's what warfighters do. They stand behind leaders and have their back. Warfighters understand mission, they understand teamwork, they understand loyalty. And they understand that in the middle of a fight, you don't weaken your own side, you advance to the objective. And that's what Ed Galrine understands, because he has lived it. The best warriors, like Ed, are usually the most humble men in the room. If you've met him and you've met them, you know the type. They don't need applause. They don't seek the spotlight. They don't confuse publicity with accomplishment. Ed Galrine's record speaks for itself. Thomas Massey's record speaks for itself, too. Too much grandstanding, too few great votes. Years of acting like being difficult is the same thing as being courageous. It's not. Real courage means stepping up when the mission matters most, when we need that tough vote to beat left-wing lunatic Democrats the most. Real courage means understanding that this country is facing existential threats and deciding to be part of the solution instead of constantly trying to position yourself above the fight. Kentucky has a choice in this race. You can send a warrior, reinforcements for the president in our shared fight against the radical left, or you can send an obstructionist. In my mind, it's an easy choice. You can send a Navy SEAL determined to fight for President Trump's agenda and with his full endorsement to help save this country. Because I'll tell you, based on what we're up against, that's exactly what this moment requires. Strength, clarity, conviction, and unity. This moment demands leaders who love this country unapologetically, like President Trump and like Ed Galrine. leaders who believe America is worth defending, leaders who understand peace comes through strength, not apologies, not weakness, not surrender, and leaders who stand with President Trump. In the military and in the past few years, I've had the chance in the front line to see courage under pressure, to see sacrifice, to see brotherhood, and that spirit still exists in this great country. It's incredible to watch the best of our country, the real 1%, do their job every single day on behalf of us with no desire for the spotlight. It is still very much alive. Don't look to Washington to it for the most part. Look to our country and to our formations. But now America needs to bring more of that same spirit into the halls of Congress. Now is not the time to sit on the sidelines. President Trump is leading the fight to restore American greatness. I have a chance to see it every single day. And what he needs and what he deserves, he needs reinforcements. He needs to bolster our ranks, not obstructionism. He has enough obstruction from Democrats. We need reinforcement from Republicans. And that fight requires a Congress full of warriors, including Ed. This one, ladies and gentlemen, is a no-brainer. Ed, thank you for stepping up. Thank you for your willingness to raise your right hand again. You did, knowing and understanding what you did in the military, you could have hung it up and done anything you want. Instead, you're deciding to get back into the arena. That says a lot about you in the toughest of races. It says a lot about you. You are badly needed. So good luck, Godspeed, God bless Kentucky and our great republic. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for joining America First Works for this policy discussion on American greatness.
What was that noise? Oh my god, I went away for a second and then it was Let's go to Jenny Pirro. Did you guys like that? What'd you think? Let's see. What the heck? Oh. Go on.
Friday. Side of my office. And I wanted to kind of follow up on what I first spoke about on Friday. What happened this past Saturday night at Chipotle in the Navy Yard, and what we're seeing increasingly across the district is not only unacceptable, it is violent, it is dangerous, and it is illegal. And I am here to tell you it is going to stop. And parents, I'm talking about you now. This is a different scenario than any other time in the history of the district. district, because we are looking beyond those individuals who are committing the crimes, irrespective of how old they are. And we're looking at the parents to make sure that they understand that they are responsible for the upheaval that is going on in this district that is impacting everyone who lives here. I was at a doctor's appointment at 8 o'clock this morning, and the doctor was concerned about what's going on in the district. This is across the board. This is something that we should all be interested in making sure ends. And trust me, I'm going to do my part. This kind of thing is destroying the quality of life in the district. The residents are finding it extremely difficult to enjoy public parks and spaces, as well as waterfront areas. And the residents are starting to feel like these out of control teens are taking away their happiness and their quiet enjoyment. So as we move into the summer months, make no mistake, crime increases as the weather gets warmer and school is out. Now, just this past weekend, with the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force, as well as MPD, we seized 32 guns. 2 days in the weekend, 32 guns. They're coming out and they're emboldened for whatever reason. And it's time to let them know that that's not going to serve them well. And the truth is, these kids, these teens, if you want to call them kids, they need to find something productive to do. And parents, that's your job. That's not our job. And I am sick and tired of people saying to me, oh, the teens have nothing to do. Yes, they do. The Department of Parks and Recreation has over 1,700 individual programs for teens, and parents take advantage of this and have your kids get involved in everything from basketball, baseball, boxing, tennis, ballet, cheerleading, kickball, track and field. And honestly, parents, there's a softer side to this. We don't want your kids victimized either, and neither should you. And that requires that you do something about this. And that's why we're going to hold you accountable now. These are not harmless gatherings. They are violent and they are disruptive. And you can see from what happened at Chipotle's this past weekend, it was not just violence occurring between individuals. It was simply destruction of property. It was a takeover of a restaurant by individuals who felt that they could get away with it. Well, they're not going to get away with it. And I'm going to tell you how in a couple of minutes. But this terrorizing is going to end. And the message that lawlessness runs the streets is over. The city belongs to law-abiding residents, not roaming mobs looking to make a name for themselves or to contribute to the chaos or violence and to get social media attention. These are not kids being kids. This is criminal conduct. But for those kids, those teens who insist on participating in these mobs, understand something. A social media click is not worth a criminal record. And we will make sure that you have a criminal record. And if you think that being a teen gives you a pass to terrorize businesses and neighborhoods, you're about to find out otherwise. We will arrest you, and where we can, we will prosecute you aggressively, and we will prosecute your parents. And to those repeat offenders and anyone carrying weapons, assaulting officers, destroying property or targeting businesses, expect serious consequences. And to those who organize these teen takeovers or these mob connections, when you do so on social media, we have your social media, and that lasts forever. And that's all we need to pin this on you. Then on Friday, I made it clear that I was going against the parents who take and refuse to take responsibility to stop this kind of thing. I said they would face consequences, and I meant it. I talked about DC Code And I want to reiterate, it is 22-811 that I am going to use to prosecute you for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Parents, you are not a bystander in this crisis. The taxpayers who are footing the bill by extra policing, cleaning up damaged property, suffering the effects of these illegal gatherings, whether it be noise or fights or robberies or chaos, are done. Starting now, parents, you're paying the bills. And if you know where your teen is and what your teen is doing, and you allow them to continue their conduct and continue to allow them to flourish, then we're going to prosecute you. And you can't just say, well, I really didn't know, I'm not so sure. This is going to be a strict liability crime and a strict liability prosecution. Now, how am I going to do this? When teens are repeatedly violating the curfew, when they're repeatedly truant from school, when they possess alcohol or drugs, no matter how much, it doesn't mean that they have to be prosecuted. When they are violating a court order, or when they're already a PINS, a person in need of supervision, or committing criminal offenses like we saw in Chipotle, we're coming for you and we're coming for your parents. If your teen, parents, is a curfew violator, you're subject to a $500 fine each and every time. And if there are crimes under contributing to the delinquency of a minor, you face up to 6 months in prison. And I am not shy about looking for jail time. The people of the district have had enough, and we do not want this increasing as these teens run wild through our neighborhoods. Now, this is going to be a coordinated, holistic approach. This morning, I spoke to Chief Jeffrey Carroll about the need for my office to know who the teens are who've gotten a curfew violation. Because if there's more than one or two, parents, you're on my list. I spoke to the police chief about those teens who are wearing masks when they are committing crimes. That's an additional violation. It's an OAG violation, but it's a violation nonetheless, and I can bootstrap the parents into that. I also spoke with the local DC Attorney General, Brian Schwab, and he and I are on the same page as it relates to his giving my office the information that I need about PINS, about young people in the family court who are in trouble, who are in a position where they are being monitored and under a court order. It is then that I can pull their parents in. I've got everything in place now. And I spoke to the chancellor of schools. That one is yet to be determined. So if you've been following the DC news, you know that there has been a back and forth with the DC Council, who for whatever reason are refusing to vote on a curfew, a new curfew that will allow Mayor Bowser, and with whom I am on the same page on this, along with Chief Jeffrey Carroll, to impose a discretionary curfew based upon information that is coming to their attention. In fact, right now, the curfew is 11 to 6 weekdays, and I think on weekends it may be 12 to 6. But the DC Council is not willing to deal with this. They punted, and you know they punted when the kids were on spring break between, I believe it was April 15th and April 21st. And they literally just went home. Well, I'm telling you now that there's a meeting tomorrow of the DC Council. And I am now asking the people of the District of Columbia who agree with the mayor and the chief and me, that they need the ability to create this curfew based upon the discretionary and the recent information, to call every one of these members of the DC Council and tell them that we need a curfew. We need a discretionary curfew where the mayor and the chief have the ability to get the police and get the teens out of areas so we can enjoy the quality of life that we are entitled to. Enough of this nonsense. If we don't do this ourselves, no one is going to do it for us. And in the end, this is a coordinated effort, and it is something where I want to thank the MPD. I want to thank Darren Cox, who is in charge of the Washington Field Office of the FBI, all of our law enforcement partners who are working tirelessly to restore law and order. They have shown tremendous professionalism and restraint. I say this every time, and I have to say it because I desperately believe it. We are in the most important city in the nation. This is the nation's capital. This is where the 250th anniversary will take place on July 4th. This is where we have to make people proud of that city on the hill. And unless we all come together and do this together, it's not going to happen. But I'm an optimist, and I believe that it will. So now I'd like to call upon Darren Cox, who can tell us what we're doing to deal with this violent takeover. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Darren Cox. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I want to pledge our support to our partners who are investigating these takeovers. Make no mistake, these takeovers are not harmless gatherings. They're violent incidences that often lead to assaults, fights, and robberies. They disrupt commerce and spread violence throughout our communities. The FBI is devoting personnel and resources to investigate all possible federal violations during these violent takeovers. If the subjects are 18 or older, they are considered adults in the eyes of the law. And any federal crime that they commit will be investigated and referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office here in D.C. for full and aggressive prosecution. We will support the U.S. Attorney's Office in also prosecuting any minors who engage in federal criminal conduct. The FBI will not tolerate physical violence or the disruption of commerce that violates federal laws. We will continue to support the Metropolitan or MPD, also the U.S. Attorney's Office, and all of our federal and local partners in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'm sure you're going to ask the question, and I'll try to answer it now. This case is under investigation right now. We are working diligently on it. The FBI is working. They have, I don't want to say techniques. You have, do you want to talk about it or no?
Not at this
He doesn't want to talk about it. You see, that's what happens with the FBI. They are using all of their resources. We are trying to identify these people. They may be teens. They may not be teens. We don't know. But in this, we were trying to figure out for you what pictures to show you. And I'm sure you all have already looked at this online. There's one point where I think a man is in a blue shirt, or maybe it's a red shirt, and he has a little girl in a pink dress, and he's hugging the little girl. That infuriated me, and it should infuriate every one of you. This has to stop. These people feel that they can do this and that they can destroy the property of others and victimize other human beings and destroy property, destroy a business. People are petrified. We're going to put an end to this. I'm telling you, we're going to put an end to it. Yes.
Hi, Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. I have two questions for you. How soon can we see charges against parents? And then you mentioned the planning of these teen takeovers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any idea who's planning them and how widespread that is?
Let me answer the first, the last question first, and that is in terms of the planning. It can be the spur of the moment. Let's all get together in this place. It's on social media, and then if we're tracking the social media, then we've got to be able to say, or the police will be able to identify that area and go there and break it up. Okay, but if there is no curfew, a discretionary curfew is it's called, then we can't do anything until they start committing a crime. We can't even break it up. Okay. And that's why it's so important. I've put their names up and their telephone numbers up for a reason. Call them. Tell them this. They don't lose anything by voting to give law enforcement the ability to protect teens and protect the citizens. And what was the first question? How long before what? Oh, okay. I think if you read between what I was saying, there were several parts of the statute of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Subdivision 1 is if they're truant from school. In order for me to find that, I have to work out something with the chancellor of schools. I have to have that information. If they possess or consume alcohol or have a prescription that is not have drugs that they don't have a prescription for that I can get from the MPD, we're going to be working together. If they violate a court order, the Office of the Attorney General has indicated that he will start working with us on that. They violate any criminal law, I can do that. If they violate a court order, if the street gang doesn't work. There are any one of a number of subdivisions of 811 that we can use. But what this means is that we have to start backtracking now. We can get someone, for example, in this situation, but before I can prosecute a parent, I've got to know that there is some knowledge that they were soliciting or recruiting, assisting, supporting, causing, encouraging, enabling, inducing, advising. There's a lot of verbs in there. And if I can prove that, I'll go after them. But understand, it's almost a backtrack. What are the truancy records? What are the family court records? What are the criminal records? What are the criminal records that I can access? You know, what do I know about the parents from kids? I was a family court judge for a while. Persons in need of supervision. Understand it's going to take a while, but it's a holistic approach, and I've got pretty much everyone in place to do this. Yes.
So this happened almost 48 hours ago.
Yeah.
Multiple camera angles. I know you have techniques that you're working on to figure out exactly who is behind this. But what is your message to that dad? Because I felt the same way that you did as he's holding his daughter.
Yeah.
You have MPD that said they were a minute away and still made no arrest by the time they got on scene. You have National Guard in the area. You have FBI. What more resources could you add preventatively in addition to charging parents?
Well, I mean, obviously, our focus is to arrest the wrongdoers. I mean, that's our first focus. I don't know about the time as it relates to the MPD, the FBI, the National Guard. I don't know what the allegations are or what you're referring to, but what I can tell you is everyone is right now making sure that they are working on this. This is top of mind today for everyone that you mentioned. Yes, sir.
Caleb Hughes, the Washington Examiner. I just want to get you to maybe reiterate or say, is your concern that if this curfew is not in place, that the lack of curfew is a contributing factor for what we see happening at like Chipotle? Is your concern without that curfew that other restaurants could be ransacked, things like that, because it's like 1 + 1 = 2 sort of situation?
Well, what the discretionary curfew gives us is the ability for police to go in and break it up. Okay, and get these kids. They either end up with the Division for Youth and Family Services, or they get taken somewhere where their parents or a guardian have to pick them up. Okay, so it's dispersed almost automatically. So that in itself prevents it. You know, it's almost, when you talk about did it take police longer? I mean, I don't know. But what I'm saying to you is that, if we know about it ahead of time, we're there before it happens. And that's one of the benefits. Yes. Yeah.
I think what you were saying was that this discretion, I'm not taking your time, it's just like, it allows the cops to look at social media, it allows them to go prior, otherwise they can't do anything with the curfew. We know that some of these takeovers don't just involve DC.
Wait, Jerome, what?
Virginia,
What are you talking about?
I think that's been proven. What happens to those
parents?
Yes. Can we do anything about it?
No. Probably not. I mean, I would have to have some real nexus there. Would you like to speak? Spence?
I'm happy to.
All right, this is Michael Spence. Michael Spence is in charge of the DA side of my office as opposed to the federal side. Hit it, Michael.
All right, thank you, Judge. So to answer your question, I really think it depends on the circumstances. We would, in all of these cases, we're going to do a lot of investigation with our law enforcement partners, but there may be circumstances where we may be able to prosecute parents who live in Maryland or Virginia. Their kids are still here in the district. Their kids are not being supervised. They're not doing what they need to as parents. And there are plenty of other parts of our criminal code where conduct outside of the district, if it affects things happening in the district, we can charge that as well. But it depends on the circumstances.
But your message is the same, I would imagine, to these teenagers who are thinking about coming to this.
My message is the same to the teenagers and their parents. Okay, if Mike can figure it out, I'm all in. All right, everybody. Yes. Oh, you again. You sat over there.
Have you been able to identify any of the individuals who were their customers in this?
I don't know yet. I really don't. Do you know? Yeah, well, believe me, we will get our hands around this as quickly as possible.
And then, given the weaponization announcement today, I just want to see if you think at all that any taxpayer money, the weaponization announcement from the anti-weaponization.
Caleb, drive safe, friend. Drive safe.
I don't know anything about this.
It's the settlement money through the Trump IRS settlement that they.
Yeah, I'm not involved in that. You always ask these out of my lane questions. What?
Judge, you have Trayon White up here. He lost his appeal to throw out his case.
Yeah, Trayon. He's still on the city council. You want his number? Yeah, there he is, Trayon. Huh? Why don't you have Trayon's picture there? Oh, now I'm going to get in trouble.
I didn't know if there was a reason.
No, there is no reason.
Do you have any reaction to him losing the appeal? And
No, I don't have any reaction. Look, I'm pretty much a straight shooter. The judge makes a decision. Sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. I have a job to do. I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to apologize for not having his picture here. That'll make headlines.
Is the FBI leading the investigation, this specific investigation, and will the FBI leading future investigations into other youth mob environment attacks?
This investigation is being led by MPD, and we are providing assistance to them in this investigation. And one thing I would ask is the photographs that you've seen here and also on social media, if individuals have the identity or know about them or have any information about the individuals that would have been in Chipotle, please make sure that you're reaching out to MPD to provide that information.
How common is that for the FBI to help local police in these sorts of environments? Is this a unique thing for the Washington field office?
No, it's not unique. We help state and locals across the country. And once we identify a federal nexus, we work with them. And at this point in time, we're working with MPD. We're providing both agent and analytical support in this investigation. Once we identify federal charges, once we identify the subjects, then we'll obviously consult with the U.S. Attorney's Office here and see if additional federal charges are appropriate, and if so, then we would lead those investigations.
One of the, and I think it's important to add to what Darren just said, is because of the president's Make DC Safe and Beautiful, we've gotten into kind of a rhythm where we work together, and we find that there are tremendous aspects of each other that we can utilize to help us with our cases. So I'm really proud of the engagement between local and federal. Yes.
National Guard, are you going to, or is there a conversation about how are we going to position National Guard with this summer? Are those going to change in terms of parole, where they're patrolling, I mean?
Well, I think that we're going to leave up to Gaddy Seralta, who is in charge of the task force and the marshals. I just get the information from them when they make an arrest or when they need legal advice, and we provide that advice to them. That's really their milieu. But I want to thank you. Please, by the way, one of the names that was yelled was Rondell. Rondell was one of the names in the video where someone said, I think, stop Rondell, something like that. Play it back. If anybody knows of a name or a person, that'll help us out.
One last quick question.
Yeah.
Would you have any message to say for the city council members? Do you believe that by refusing to put any sort of curfew in place, that it could be endangering Americans who are coming to this nation's capital this summer, who are just trying to have a good time and celebrate?
I think the members of the council should do their job, and their job is very clear, and that is to protect the people of the district. And when they go home and they punt on issues where the chief of police and the mayor believe it's important, and the United States attorney and whoever else is in this room, maybe they ought to think twice about it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Con. Appreciate you. You guys, what? Okay, so some of you didn't like that. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know.
You don't think so?
Oh, shoot. What did I do? Yes. Yeah. What do you guys think about that, huh? It's early. Don't talk about what I look like. So, I don't know. Let's go here.
They call this the road of life, but it's about survival, not living. It is safest on foot, under skies ruled by tiny killer drones targeting any vehicle. The nets trying to block the horror from above. Make the robot your friend, your porter. The machines are normally the enemy here.
This now.
Do you like that, Plan B?
Pretty much all over the front lines.
Thank you guys.
Tiny bits of fiber optic cable used to connect drones to their controller can go on for tens of kilometers, stopping the jamming before.
Kaiser. You guys know I don't care that much. I just seen the news. Look at this.
A Russian drone above. The Ukrainians open fire.
I thought this was good footage. I wanted to show you.
Stay in the doorway.
Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you.
They hit it.
That's the impact. And you have to split out because the drone will try and target groups of individuals. Sometimes 1, 2, 3 you find.
We're doing Sasha and Bogdan's usual walk along this road between two Ukrainian positions, but it takes 5 hours and we are buzzed by attack drones 14 times. The threats change every month. Here, looking for loitering drones, they hover low and wait for you. A radio warning. The trees aren't just a place to hide, but somewhere the drones cannot fly. Russian drones circle, targeting vehicles, but also dropping explosives on troops. You have to keep moving, or they may swarm around you.
The battlefield has completely changed in a matter of a year. Nobody drives cars on this road unless you have to. Nobody drives in tanks. That's outgoing artillery. These robots used for resupply. Up ahead we can see people repairing the nets, a kind of key protection. But these used to resupply food, ammunition, all around the front line.
Gunfire means run again.
This is a pretty constant. And the only move is to hide into the trees, but there it lands. Not far.
You might be thinking, why not walk inside the nets?
Маневрировать, если вишка, то маневр.
Швидкість велика автомобілів, а від їх не десь треба. І скупчення. This is part of the problem here, in that after an hour of this, you don't quite get numb to it, but they see something here, you get slightly too comfortable and tired.
The next one is right on top of us.
There it is. There it is.
Thank you, brother.
They hit it. That grey streak. And it falls. Whirling down. But it hasn't detonated. Debris drifts. There's been no blast. So we are alive. It may have been a recon drone, but flew like a Russian attacker. Down the road is the Konstantinivka front, where the Kremlin's advance has been slowed to a crawl at the enormous cost across the front of 35,000 Russian dead and wounded a month, says Ukraine. This is the 10th attack.
They caught sight of it briefly, and it appears to be coming closer now. It's the intense fire. You can hear it. Maybe that vehicle is still. See it up.
Drones also target heavy gunfire. Their friend, a lieutenant, killed when this car was hit just 2 days ago.
Роман, подія трапилася. Спочивай, з Богом.
We are nearing their bunker position. There are moments here to rest, see the trophies of drones that failed, but we have to get back.
Ні, чесно кажучи, не думала. Я взагалі пішла ще до повномасштабної війни і не розраховувала, взагалі ніхто не думав, що таке буде. Зараз трохи тяжко, це з часом трохи вигораєш від цього всього, але звикаєш. І ж розумієш, що треба це робити.
As soon as we emerge, they are above us again. This is the new warfare. Hide, shoot at the sky, run, fire drones back. The impact's just as deadly as shelling, the accuracy horrific.
Have to walk in, but also walk out.
Монах над деревами. Плюс, чую.
The buzz stays with you, ringing in your ears for hours later. No respite. The grey smoke, perhaps it hit the net.
That was close, loud. You could hear the shrapnel landing on the tarmac, clearly targeting that armoured vehicle.
It is hard to see how this grind is a win, but it is. Ukraine on foot, robots in support, automation replacing scarce troops, holding ground. The drones never stop, but neither does Ukraine, adapting, learning, engineering this new warfare, and hoping any edge sustains long enough to put Russia in reverse.
Look, we're not at the stage here where it seems as though Ukraine is actually winning the war, but the overarching sense of dread of the past year or so that they were losing inevitably, that's certainly gone. And it's their use of technology to bridge the acute manpower crisis they're facing. It's their deep strikes inflicting pain in the heart of Russia's motherland. And it's also, I think, at times Moscow's pain and problems appear to be acute, if not at times worse than that of Kiev. A real sense of a change in the mood here in Ukraine's favor. Nick Payton-Walsh, CNN, Kiev, Ukraine.
Let me give you guys an update on what's going on in Iran right now, okay?
Trump says he is postponing a scheduled attack on Iran to give peace talks more time. The president posting a few hours ago that he had planned to resume
Y'all doing
hostilities
okay?
against the Islamic Republic tomorrow, but allies in the region asked him to wait. Sunday, the president warned Iran that the clock is ticking and time is of the essence. This comes as the region's only nuclear plant is targeted in a drone strike. Authorities in the United Arab Emirates are calling it an unprovoked terrorist attack by Iran. Meanwhile, in Iran, the conflict is taking a devastating toll on the economy there, with more than $270 billion in damages so far. We have Fox team coverage, Ashley Webster in Tel Aviv, Israel, with additional details on the Iranian financial woes. But we begin with correspondent Alexandra Hoff, live from the North Lawn of the White House. Good evening, Alex.
Good evening to you, Brett. President Trump acknowledging a short time ago at an event here at the White House that it feels like we've been here before, with the U.S. getting close to a deal with Iran only for it to fall apart. He says this time it's a little different.
A fragile ceasefire still stands as President Trump expresses renewed optimism in negotiations with Iran. In an afternoon Truth Social post, the president credits the leaders of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE for requesting the U.S. hold off on a scheduled attack of Iran, writing, in their opinion, as great leaders and allies, a deal will be made, which would be very acceptable to the United States of America, as well as all countries in the Middle East and beyond. This deal will include, importantly, no nuclear weapons for Iran.
This enriched uranium that they possess, they can't keep it. President Trump has been very clear about that. That is one of the red lines in these negotiations.
But the Iranians want to talk about nuclear capabilities after an agreement to end hostilities has been made. Iranian officials confirmed that an updated proposal has been passed through Pakistani mediators to the Trump administration. Axios reports that the amended plan lacked detailed commitments to suspend uranium enrichment or commitments to hand over nuclear material. Sunday, President Trump posted that the clock is ticking, but Iran's foreign ministry claims that the back and forth shows that no deal from Iran has been downright rejected.
Despite the fact that the American side publicly announced that this plan was rejected, we received, through the Pakistani mediator, a set of points and corrective considerations from their side.
According to New York Times Siena poll released today, 65% of registered voters disapprove of the president's handling of the war in Iran, 69% unhappy with how President Trump is handling the cost of living.
President Trump adding today that if an acceptable deal is not reached, that the U.S. military is very ready to wage a full-scale assault. Brett.
Alex, thank you. The Trump administration is hoping the increasing economic pressure on Iran will lead to a peace deal. This comes as two U.S. allies in the region are being targeted by hostile forces. Tonight, Ashley Webster of Fox Business reports from Tel Aviv on the conditions inside Iran.
Pakistan has reportedly deployed 8,000 troops, a squadron of fighter jets, and an air defense system to Saudi Arabia. The two countries share a mutual defense pact, and it comes after Saudi Arabia said it was attacked by drones launched by Iraq. Meantime, a drone strike hit close to a nuclear power plant over the weekend west of Abu Dhabi. No damage or injuries reported, but the UAE, who didn't identify a potential attacker, calls it a dangerous escalation. In Tehran, Iran's president says it is time to be honest about the toll that the war has had on his country, saying Iran faces serious challenges. With the country's currency almost worthless, prices of goods have skyrocketed, and local business owners have had no access to the internet for months.
Honestly, we do not see a good future with this situation, because the internet has also been completely shut down, and half of our work depended on the internet.
The U.S. says Iranian leaders are responsible for the economic misery in their country, using money to fund terrorist groups instead. For the Iranian people, relief will not likely come soon. The U.S. naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz is still in place. The latest statement from U.S. Central Command shows that U.S. forces have now redirected 85 commercial vessels and disabled 4.
So the question tonight remains whether or not the suffering, the economic suffering of the Iranian people is enough to force Tehran to the negotiating table, or perhaps it already has. Well, we'll see. Brett, back to you.
Ashley Webster live in Tel Aviv. Ashley, thank you.
Let's go to our chief foreign correspondent in the region, Trey Yingst in Tel Aviv. Hi, Trey.
Martha, good afternoon. President Trump spoke today with the New York Post, indicating he is not open to concessions for Iran. These comments come as reports indicate the Iranian regime submitted a counterproposal, a revised document to Pakistani mediators aimed at addressing some of the gaps in their previous response that President Trump described as a piece of garbage. U.S. officials say the Iranian updates do not address the main concerns of the negotiating team.
Therefore, from the very day after we sent our points to the American side via Pakistan, we were faced with a series of proposals from the other side, which have been reviewed over the past few days. As was announced yesterday, our own views have in turn been conveyed to the American side.
President Trump also told the Post that Iran knows what's going to be happening soon, hinting at military action. He posted to Truth Social overnight with a new warning for the regime, saying for Iran, the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast, or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence. The Middle East remains on edge, waiting to see if the war will resume in the days ahead. And the economic impact on Iran continues to worsen each day to the U.S. naval blockade. A senior Israeli official speaking to Fox News over the weekend said early signs of a developing fuel crisis started emerging over the weekend, including long lines at gas stations and growing public discontent over fuel shortages and distribution problems. Prices continue to rise, unemployment is climbing, and inflation is accelerating sharply. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called today for U.S. allies to increase the economic pressure on the Iranian regime.
We call upon all our G7 and indeed all of our allies and the rest of the world to follow the sanctions regimes so that we can crack down on the illicit finance that is fueling the Iranian war machine and get this money back to the Iranian people.
Right now, Iranian state media is reporting, Martha, just in the last few minutes, that there are air defense systems active near Keshem Island in the Strait of Hormuz. We don't know exactly what these reports are about, but this is a serious indication from Iranian state media. There could be some ongoing activity in this area.
Okay. We will stay on top of that with your help, Trey Yingst. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. With that, we bring in retired Navy Captain Brent Sadler, whose 26 years of service includes operational tours on nuclear-powered submarines. He is now Heritage Foundation Senior Research Fellow, and retired Lieutenant General Mark Wetherington, former B-1 and B-2 pilot, served as Deputy Commander of the Air Force Global Strike Command. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's very good to have both of you with us today. I want to get to a quote from leadership in Iran, but I think first I'd like to get your reaction to the news that was just reported by Trey Yingst and Brent Sadler, Captain Sadler, if I may start with you. So if they are employing air defense capabilities at Keshem Island, which, everyone's very familiar with Karg Island, Keshem is one of the other operational facilities for oil production in Iran. If they're beginning to show signs that they're operating those air defense systems, what does that tell you?
Well, thank you. And the location of that island is important to note because of the other naval facilities and its proximity to the Straits of Hormuz. And so I think it's not necessarily, I wouldn't lead to conclusions that we're going after their oil infrastructure. It's too early to know that. And this information doesn't point in that direction yet. But clearly the Iranians have been using, swarms of small boats backed by drones and perhaps some limited air, again, like maybe helicopters, but very short range. Perhaps these could be the attacks, the long-awaited ones, to go after to degrade the last parts of the IRGC's maritime forces, these small motorboats, the Mosquito fleet, if you will. And so we'll hopefully hear in the next few hours what actually the targets are. I think if it is that, you'll see confidence go up that the strait is being made safe or safer for shipping to pick back up.
So with regard to that, Colonel Wetherington, tell me a little bit about, Commander Wetherington, tell me a bit about what you think the options are that are being laid on the table for the president right now, because he has said, they know what will happen next if they don't come to an agreement that is acceptable to both sides. And he was presented with some options, apparently, over the weekend on Saturday. Another Situation Room meeting, we understand, will take place on military options tomorrow as well. What do they look like? What do you think?
Well, Martha, thanks for having me. And I think Brent highlighted a couple things to bear in mind. One is you're not going to change the geography of this fight. And certainly the Strait of Hormuz and where Iran sits astride that is an incredibly difficult geography for us to deal with. And it wouldn't surprise me that we would try to continue to eliminate the offensive capabilities that regime has in that area. But this is going to be an ongoing effort, right? It's going to be tough to completely eliminate any of those capabilities, whether that's the drones, whether that's some of their very simple ballistic missile capabilities. We're going to continue to hit the production of those types of weapons, but they're going to continue to adapt and shift that production around. And so I really see, how much of an effort is going to be made? How much of a signal are we trying to send? How much pain are we trying to impose to demonstrate that we can be there and cause some effects in Iran that are detrimental and influence that regime and their choices?
All right. I'm just getting word of a new post by President Trump, which we will take a look at. It says, I've been asked by the Emir of Qatar and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, and the President of the United Arab Emirates. And he goes on to talk about the leadership of the Gulf states to hold off on our planned military attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was scheduled for tomorrow. In that serious negotiations are now taking place, and that in their opinion, as great leaders and allies, a deal will be made, which will be very acceptable to the United States, as well as the countries in the Middle East and beyond. The deal will include, importantly, no nuclear weapons for Iran. Based on my respect for the above-mentioned leaders, I have instructed the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, and the United States military that we will not be doing the scheduled attack of Iran tomorrow, but have further instructed them to be prepared to go forward with a full, large-scale assault of Iran at a moment's notice in the event that an acceptable deal is not reached. Thank you for your attention as the close, as he often does, from President Trump. Let me just get both of your reaction to that. Brent Sadler, you first, if you would.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important to also note at the same time, you've got President Putin in Beijing right now meeting Xi Jinping, following up after President Trump's successful summit meeting there last week. So whether or not the Russians play into this calculation, of course, the Russians do have relations with many of those Gulf nations as well, another oil power. So there could be a calculus there, but not to draw too many conclusions from that. I think it's important to note that those same countries were very disappointed that there weren't more stronger military attacks against Iran at one stage in this. And so now, if there is potential for a deal, it's something that's not being seen very clearly. Perhaps there's fractures in the regime and outreach that we're not seeing yet. But again, take away the Iranian regime's ability to threaten the strait, and it's these small boats and a very visible, attack against those might actually have the same effect. Get the Iranians to be more compliant in negotiations. Gas prices would start to go down because the shipping would be able to transit more safely. It's really the small boats is the last thing they have to harass, and it's certainly not sinking ships.
So, Commander Wetherington, weigh in, if you would, on the president's post just a moment ago. And I would just say at the outset that one of the, interesting characteristics of all of this in the history of the Middle East is that from the beginning, it really has seen the United States, Israel, and these Gulf states on the same side. Why do you think that the Gulf states at this stage of the game, because we know the outcome that they want as well, they want to be dominant in the region. They don't want Iran to have the ability to hold everyone hostage in this region. Why might they be asking the president to wait on an attack that we're now learning was scheduled for tomorrow?
I think the importance of the statement that the president made was the emphasis placed on collaboration with our allies in the region. And certainly the Gulf states have taken a tremendous beating in some respects from Iran. Very surprised at the outset how aggressive Iran was at striking those Gulf states. They certainly have a desire to limit the amount of attacks or destruction that occurs, but they also have a desire to, for stable economic and commercial use of the strait. And I think they're working toward that aim. And I think deep down, Iran also shares that interest. And it's good to hear that we're working toward that type of collaborative solution.
Commander Wetherington, Captain Sadler, thank you very much. Good to have you with us, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to revisit the breaking news that we brought you at the top of the hour. President Trump posting on Truth Social, quote, Qatar, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and the President of the UAE to hold off on our planned military attack of Iran, which was scheduled for tomorrow. In that serious negotiations are now taking place. And in that, in their opinion, a deal will be made, which will be very acceptable to the United States, as well as all the countries in the Middle East and beyond. The deal will include, importantly, no nuclear weapons for Iran. Based on my respect for the above-mentioned leaders, I have instructed the Secretary of War, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the United States military that we will not be doing the scheduled attack of Iran tomorrow. So with that, we bring in White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly. Anna, welcome. Good to have you here. What can you tell us about what has changed here and how this came about?
Well, Martha, good afternoon. Nothing's changed. The president, as he said time and time again, is extremely serious. Iran, a country that for 47 years has chanted death to America, has threatened our troops overseas, can never possess a nuclear weapon. And I think his truth post reinforces just how serious he is, because Iran has a number of problems on their hands because President Trump holds all the cards. They have been absolutely decimated militarily. They're now being strangled economically by Operation Economic Fury. And now they're more isolated than ever before. Look at some of those individual countries that are mentioned in that truth post. These are countries that tragically were brought into this conflict by no fault of their own and attacked by this rogue Iranian regime, and they are fed up with what is happening. So the president is very serious. It's incumbent upon the Iranian regime to come to the table and make a deal in a serious way.
Yeah, let me just ask you about this. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that their right to enrich is non-negotiable. We are not going to negotiate or compromise over this. Our right to enrichment is recognized under the NPT agreement and the Treaty for Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. There is no need for another party to recognize this right for Iran. Our right already exists. Is the thinking that the Gulf states are aware that that has changed?
Well, the thinking is that the Iranian ability to enrich has been totally decimated by Operation Midnight Hammer. This enriched uranium that they possess, they can't keep it. President Trump has been very clear about that. That is one of the red lines in these negotiations, in addition to the fact that they can point blank never produce a nuclear weapon. So President Trump has been very clear that enriched uranium must be turned over, and the Iranians would do full well, because they have seen more than anybody that President Trump is very serious. He does not bluff. Operation Epic Fury proved that. A lot of these conversations, I'll also say, they're a little different than what happens in private between what happens in public. But look, the president has made our red lines in these negotiations very clear. Iran must renounce their nuclear ambitions for good.
So the president made it very clear that he said, I would feel a whole lot better if we had what he calls the dust. So it would stand to reason that any deal, if it does come together, that is now preventing a reopening of kinetic war here, must include securing that nuclear material and, putting it in our hands, putting it in someone's hands where the president feels comfortable with that. Would you expect that there would be no deal unless that is also secured and out of Iran's hands?
Well, again, the president's made our red lines very clear. They can't have a nuclear weapon, and they can't possess this nuclear or this enriched nuclear dust, as he calls it, which could be very quickly improved to produce a nuclear weapon. And again, President Trump holds all the cards here. Iran has been decimated militarily. They've been strangled economically. They're now more isolated than ever before. And so it's incumbent upon them to get serious and make a deal with the United States before it's too late.
So what I would imagine we're going to hear, from the president about this, because we hear from him a lot as he moves through the process on all of this. But do we know how long this pause is for if he doesn't get the deal that he wants very quickly?
I'll say this, I'll never put red lines or timelines on the president. That's up to him to do himself if he so chooses. But our force posture remains the same. We have all of the same military assets in place that we did prior to Operation Economic Fury, when we again totally dismantled their ballistic missiles, their production facilities, their Navy, weakened their proxies. So President Trump holds all the cards. He has all options at his disposal at all times. And so if he feels that the Iranians are not negotiated negotiating in good faith, surely he's going to make any decision that he feels is best for U.S. national security.
All right. New York Times polling says that 65% disapprove or strongly or somewhat disapprove of the way the president has handled the war in Iran. What's his reaction to that? What's been the discussion at the White House about this new polling, Anna?
Well, President Trump is always acting in the best interest of our U.S. national security. Again, Iran is a country that for 47 years has chanted death to America, has killed Americans overseas, has threatened our troops, and as I said earlier, has now lashed out these rogue threats against our allies in the region. So this is not a situation that is sustainable. Iran knows that better than anybody. And so the president isn't making decisions based on fluid opinion polls. He's making decisions on what is best for the national security of our country. And there's nothing more paramount than ensuring this rogue regime cannot threaten our country with a nuclear weapon.
Anna Kelly, thank you very much from the White House. Good to have you with us, Anna. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right, breaking today, President Trump telling the New York Post Iran knows what's going to be happening soon if they don't make a deal. And he reportedly prepares for a high-stakes meeting tomorrow with his national security team to consider new strikes inside Iran. Brian Mast joins us now, chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Obviously, the next few hours are critical. What do you expect to happen? What do you want to see happen?
You have President Trump, Director Radcliffe, Hegseth, Rubio, everybody will be getting together to weigh how long the clock will tick. As the president said, the clock is ticking, and what they will do, what they will target rather, in terms of any remaining nuclear infrastructure there, any remaining weapons caches, and anything that they use to close off the Straits of Hormuz. And they do this in the wake of an Iran that is even more degraded since the ceasefire began. Why? Because of Operation Economic Fury, which has been destroying them internally as well.
So Jack Keane was on Fox earlier this morning on America's Newsroom. Here's how he saw things playing out in the days ahead. Listen here.
Significant impact. But this attack will even further aggravate their ability to gain revenue source. After we open the Straits of Hormuz and begin to get it secure, offer the IRGC leaders, a free trip out to a place of their choice and see if we can work a deal, that kind of a deal with them, and make some positive changes in the regime.
The part that he said at the top that was clipped there said Kharg Island blockade is having a significant impact. I mean, what do you think is going to happen with whoever is in charge in Iran? We're not sure exactly who at this point. I mean, their economy is being squeezed. The people are getting more and more upset with the regime. Might they just at some point do like Bashar al-Assad did in Syria and call up his pal Putin and say, we'd like to come. Have you got a place for us to stay?
Look, the Iranian regime still has some ordnance remaining. They're using it on the Straits. They're using it against Qatar, UAE, Bahrain, Oman, others. They're using it against that. But they don't have enough to fight off the entire 90 million population of the Iranian people who are getting squeezed more than anybody because of this, this very stubborn regime that's committed to nuclear terror and terror on any front, whether by proxies or ballistic missiles or drones. And so that being the circumstance that they can't fight off at all, you have to continue to put this pressure on them. And I hope that the Iranian people do ultimately decide to take up those arms in the ways that they did at the beginning of this year. It's the biggest threat to that regime is the Iranian people coming after them because they don't have enough bullets to fight them off.
All right, Congressman Brian Mast, thank you for the update. We appreciate it.
Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb, a Black Hawk helicopter pilot, battalion commander, and international military strategist, is in focus now. Good to see you. Look, I made some notes as Trey was reporting. First of all, if we don't hit Iran's military very soon, is it time to just go home at this point and count up the victories that we've already had?
Yeah, good morning, Harris. Good to see you too. I think that's probably option A and option B, which is option A being that Trump follows through with the threats of use of force again, which would be unfortunate. But at this point, it's the only language the Tehran dictators know. Option B would be, we've done what we can. We hope the Iranian people would step forward, and more of our allies around the world would step forward as well. But if they don't, then it may be time to say, okay, let's redirect ourselves onto different priorities and see what happens here and do the best we can, because we can use some force if needed, but we certainly don't need to put boots on the ground.
Look, things are not quite what they were when this war started. Things have been moving around us, and two things in particular. China, and Russia. And we know that there are threats now for our NATO allies for Russia just over the weekend. The reports of that are quite jarring, as Belarus is once again in the fold with troops being put there by Russia, according to reports. Your take on the landscape now if we don't finish the job in Iran?
Yeah, I think things continue to get more dangerous in some respects. We've seen a splintering a little bit between China and Iran based on President Trump's visit with Xi, knowing that China has said we're not going to keep supplying Iran, at least publicly. What that also does is create a bit of a faction potential split between Russia and China, where that solid allied relationship that seems to be out there isn't quite as strong as many would have imagined, as well as what's happening with, as you mentioned, between Russia, Belarus, and as that grows around Ukraine, and them looking at potentially a weaker NATO as a whole. And all of this comes down to potentially how much can America do at once, and what's truly in our strategic interests, and what is not.
Can you imagine that Russia would ever consider hitting our Western European NATO allies at this point? I mean, are they saber rattling, or what's happening?
I think it's very unlikely that they would do that. Europe is doing a good enough job, essentially, of destroying itself with this mass uncontrolled immigration and change of demographics. They're likely to let that go. And plus, they've shown what they can do, and they've had a hard time moving beyond where they're at in Ukraine already. To grow that now would actually put Russia at much greater risk than if they just tried to declare some form of victory in eastern Ukraine and also stopped.
It's just fascinating how these things touch each other because of those enemies that are so yoked together. Look, I want to get to this. I don't know if Iran's delusional about how bad their economy is, or if they legitimately just don't care. But that terror regime is looking for a way out of the economic squeeze from our U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. We know that. And according to Bloomberg now, cargo trains are running from central China to Iran have jumped from roughly one per week before the blockade now to every 3 or 4 days, highlighting a growing alternative channel as Iran is looking to blunt maritime pressure. The corridor runs through multiple countries, making it far more complex to disrupt than shipping lanes in the Persian Gulf. What do you make of this? And you just said China may be a little bit of a split. Seems like they're pretty glued.
Well, China's very interested, of course, in Iran's success as their proxy, because they need that oil from Iran in the first place. They've already lost the oil from Venezuela by a part. So that means cheap crude is not flowing into China as it used to be. So they need that, and that relationship is there because they're economically tied together. This was expected that Iran would look for alternate means to continue what they could do, but increasing a couple railroad trips, a week is not going to make up for what the Strait of Hormuz is capable of doing from an economic standpoint. But we always knew Iran would look for alternate means to keep their economy and their military machines going, because the two are very much tied together. I don't see it being super effective, but it is what they're going to do and continue to do. But we also have the capability to reduce that ability as well of China to keep supplying Iran.
I've been asking all of my military leadership guests this question. It's a yes or no, and have to go quickly. If it were your decision tonight to go in and militarily move, what would you do? Yes or no, move in?
Yes, I would move in a limited capacity. Anything that doesn't put boots on the ground is what we can do. Okay. We should not be going in there with boots on the ground. That we have air power for a reason. Use it to the best we can, and we'll see how the results turn out.
Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb, always great to have you in focus. Thank you.
Thanks, Harris.
Meanwhile, this just in, President Trump, in a new interview, speaking with the New York Post, saying he is not open to any concessions for Tehran and that Iran knows what is going to be happening soon. Joining us now is Arnold Punaro, retired 2-star Marine Corps general and CEO of the Punaro Group, which leaves us wondering, sir, what he has conveyed to Iranian leadership about what may be coming next.
Well, Sandra and John, you've covered some admirable breaking news today, and here's some more breaking news. It's some timing. The timing is correct for President Trump to basically consider the resumption of major combat operations. Our military has been ready and is ready at a moment's notice to do that. The timing is appropriate for several reasons. One, while the blockade has been successful, it has not moved the hardliners fast enough on the diplomatic track, and the president was correct to start with the diplomatic track and show admirable patience, but that patience should not be and is not unlimited. But the major development, in my judgment, is the breaking news to me is that in one of the key elements of President Trump's very successful summit with China was China, Iran's largest external supporter and their largest customer for their oil, has said he agrees with President Trump. Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, and Iran should not control the Straits of Hormuz. So the president should outline and say to the Ayatollahs, I'll give you a couple of days to come to the right decision, but if you don't, I'm going to resume major military operations. We're going to go after your economic and military targets. We're going to go after your command and control. We're going to go after the Republican Guards. We're going to go after your oil storage. We're going to reduce your nuclear enterprise even further. We're going to go find those small boats. We know where they hide them at night. We may seize Cargill, and he doesn't have to give away any tactics, but he can outline for them the fact that we can break them economically and politically if they don't do the right thing in a matter of days.
General, in terms of Iran reaching the right decision, we understand that they have sent a new proposal for an end to this conflict through the Pakistani mediators to the United States. We don't know what the content of that is or how it might be modified from their last proposal, which the president said he read the first line, threw it in the trash because it was nothing more than garbage. But do you have any reason to believe that the Iranians finally had a come to Jesus meeting and they're going to agree to everything the president wants them to, or is this just another exercise in running out the clock?
John, I do not. I think this was sequenced before this major development with China now siding with President Trump, a remarkable achievement. I don't think it really is going to contain that. I really think the president, after his meeting with his top national security and military team, ought to publicly outline the fact how patient he's been, how unreasonable the Iranians have been at the diplomatic track, and here's what's going to happen, and here's what you've got to do. The Iranian leadership, they know exactly what they've got to put on the table. They haven't put it on the table yet.
Well, General, one thing's for sure, time is of the essence, says President Trump, but certainly time is of the essence when it comes to Iran being able to hold on economically. We know that they have taken an extremely hard hit to their economic abilities, and one would wonder how much longer they can hold on.
Well, that's good news, and that's one reason why the blockade has been successful internally in Iran. But I don't think it's sufficient, and I'm very skeptical that the internal pressures, the Ayatollahs are immune to their own people. They don't like their own people. They kill their own people. Those kind of economic pressures, while we want to see them continue, we can make it a heck of a lot worse for them, and I believe the president should outline that course.
And Iran continues to make threats against the United States. Ibrahim Zolfagari is a spokesman for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He posted this online. He said, quote, in the past 24 hours, the IRGC Navy did not allow any vessel to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. In the near future, all U.S. military bases in the southern Persian Gulf will be deactivated. We will build the new order. I mean, I sometimes wonder what these guys are smoking with the statements that they make. But what
John,
about this? I just going to say, what about this idea that they're again threatening U.S. bases?
It makes no sense. I mean, I don't know what they're smoking. I don't have access to that intelligence. I don't know if our intelligence apparatus does, but obviously they're on the wrong side of this issue. Again, they should pay attention to what their largest customer has said. China, Xi Jinping, we agree with the president.
Got it. General, always appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, General.
All right.
All right. Across. Brian Hook's a former special rep for Iran. And Brian, welcome to our program. Good to see you again, and thank you for coming back here. I'll play this clip. 35-year-old mechanic in Iran and said this about their condition right now.
The economic situation has completely worsened during this period because of the war. Before the war, conditions were much better. Now, because of the war, the missile attacks and some migration, with some people leaving Tehran, the economic situation has become disrupted. Business conditions were disrupted. And now, as you can see, the situation is not good.
Okay, Brian, to your court now. We know that the president said repeatedly in China last week that they have to reopen the strait. And it seems like more partners might be coming on board. Can we do this when the New York Times reports that 30 of the 33 missile sites along the strait are back and operational? What do we do?
Well, this is now 6 weeks into a ceasefire, and we've been in this limbo for some time. The Iranian regime clearly believes that time is on its side, and they're trying to wait us out. And their theory of the case is that the longer they can stretch this out with the illusion of diplomacy, it's going to make it harder for the president to restart the war. It's going to be harder economically. It's going to be harder politically. So the Iranian regime has been buying time. They see time as leverage. President Trump has now put the Iranians on the clock. And he is trying to take away that leverage by saying that this is not going to be some open-ended process that runs for weeks and weeks and weeks. There has to be some finality to this. I know that tomorrow he's going to be meeting with his national security cabinet to discuss military options. The Iranian regime really only negotiates from a position of fear. Any other negotiations tend to be fairly more like window dressing and sort of diplomatic theater. But when they're in a position of fear, that's when you tend to get the deal that you need to address Iran's nuclear, missile, and proxy threats.
Okay, I don't know if we're at that point yet or not. I know that this administration also doesn't know necessarily who's in charge or who's making decisions. And there have been a few names out there, but whether they're not on the second generation or third generation, who knows? Brian, do you think we can bomb our way to a conclusion? With Iran today, can we bomb our way to some sort of peace?
Well, I think at this point, in order to just change the dynamic, we're stuck diplomatically. There was a period right about the end of the military hostilities that the Iranian regime was seriously discussing getting rid of its highly enriched uranium and doing something about the strait. But as this is stretched on, like you said, Bill, there are people inside the regime, I think, that are they're all hardliners. You have some that actually want to be attacked again, because if they can survive it, it shows it projects strength and invincibility to the Iranian people. But then, like that person you interviewed earlier, the economic crisis is real. And that's the pressure of time that the Iranian regime is under. And this naval blockade that President Trump has started is showing very positive results. But that's going to need more time before the regime starts feeling that pressure acutely.
Brian, thanks for coming back. A lot of decisions to be made this week. Maybe they've already been made. If not, it might be the next 24 or 48 hours that are critical to understand what comes
Very
next.
much.
We'll talk to you this week, Brian. Thanks for coming back on today.
Thanks, Bill.
With the U.S. and Iran far apart in a deal to end the conflict to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, Americans are feeling the energy crunch as prices remain elevated. Prices at the pump now averaging, ka-ching, $4.51 a gallon. Not a high of the past 5 years, but getting closer. Mike Summers is the CEO of the American Petroleum Institute and joins us now. Mike, good to have you with us. Really appreciate it. So Paul Diggle, who is the chief economist at Aberdeen, said his team's now examining a scenario where Brent crude tops $180 a barrel. It's about 110 right now. You're looking at that scenario, or you're looking at a better case scenario?
Well, if you think about the fact that we're about $1 billion barrel deficit right now throughout the world because of the situation in the Strait, it's going to take a while for us to clear this situation, given the situation is ongoing and we don't know what's next in the Strait of Hormuz. About more than 10% of world oil supply has been cut off because of the situation in Iran. We have to get the Strait open and quickly as possible, because this isn't just a gasoline price issue, it's a diesel issue, but it's increasingly a jet fuel issue as well.
Right. So is that a yes to $180 a barrel, or we'll see?
We just don't know how high it can go. It depends on how long the situation goes on.
Got it. So as far as gas prices are concerned, Mike, it's Sandra here in New York. Good to have you back on. You know, you look at the average $4.51 for AAA overnight, and I think, wait, when I go out there and click on California, the average is $6.15 a gallon. I'm thinking, gosh, if you didn't have California prices in there, maybe these prices would be a lot lower as an average. But why the heck are prices so high out west?
Well, let's put some numbers on it. The truth is that California currently imports about 30% of the crude oil that they use from the Strait of Hormuz, from the Middle East. Here in the rest of the United States, it's only about 8%. So they are much more vulnerable to what's going on in the Middle East than the rest of the country is. Why is that? It's because they don't have the infrastructure in place to deal with the kind of oil that is used throughout the rest of the country. There are 0 pipelines that go in to California, for example. So the challenge that California has is unique, and hopefully that they're not going to transfer those kinds of policies that happen in California to the rest of the country.
Yeah, you mentioned jet fuel. Ed Bastian, CEO of Delta Airlines, said that the price of their tickets is going up about 10 to 15%. They're trying to hold the cost down by paying 50% of the cost of fuel, but it's no question going to go higher. Mike, we got to jump to a special event here, but we appreciate you coming in. We'll see you again soon.
Great.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Here's Mueller has convinced yet another.
Sorry, you guys. I don't know what I was trying to put in the chat. I think I was trying to say I'm hungry, but it didn't come out that way. So ignore my message. That's a great special that was coming on, but we're not going there. We're going to check out what happened in San Diego. And then after that, we just have Luigi Mangione talk about, and then I'll bid y'all good night, okay? You guys okay with that? San Diego news yesterday. Almost there. There we go. I don't know what's going on with my message. All right. In case you missed it, here it is.
Police chief, specifically the timeline. What he said is just a little over 2 hours ago, authorities were called to the Islamic Center of San Diego due to reports of gunshots. He said they arrived within about 4 minutes. Police did, and then found these 3 men victims in the parking lot of the mosque. He said authorities then went to try to enter the mosque, as they often do. They'll try to identify any potential shooter, but then police got calls of yet more shots fired at another area near the mosque. They then went to that location. They said they learned that there was a landscaper there who had been fired upon, but thankfully was not struck by bullets. But here, I have to admit, Jake, is the most strange, bizarre, however you want to describe it, part. Authorities say that they found 2 men ages 17 and 19 in a vehicle they believe to be the suspects. They believe they died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. That raises a lot of questions about, A, who those people are, but obviously what potential motivation there was here. We have had this question over the last couple hours whether the shooter or shooters, plural, may have been associated with this mosque or whether this was complete, targeted violence from the outside. We did appear to get some indication of an answer to that from the police chief, because he said that they've now brought in the FBI, the San Diego field office. He said they are treating this as a hate crime until they've determined that it's not. And of course, what that signals to us is that that would not appear to be someone who was a member of the Islamic Center there, if they're describing this as a hate crime. But again, a lot of questions here. We've covered, you and I, so many acts of mass violence in this country, so many shootings. Rarely do you ever see 2 people engaged in the same type of targeted act of violence in a shooting. But here, authorities say they believe that these 2 teens are indeed the suspects. A lot of questions about who they are, what the motivation was, and obviously why they decided to take their own lives outside this houses of worship. We often say that there are a lot of questions, more questions than answers. This is truly one of those very peculiar situations that authorities are trying to get to the bottom of. Jake.
Steve Moore, what was your first reaction to what we heard from police, the San Diego Police Department, about the shooting at the largest mosque in San Diego County?
I was kind of surprised at the fact that we didn't know that there were 5 fatalities until now. It obviously happened in a very short amount of time when and they found the shooters fairly quickly. What's interesting to me, Jake, is that obviously 2 shooters, you rarely get that. The other thing is that I responded to an active shooter one time who went to a Jewish community center. And after escaping from the Jewish community center, he shot a postal worker who was non-white. And the reason was he was a white supremacist, and that was fair game for him. The fact that they just randomly shot at a gardener makes me wonder if they had an agenda that would involve, I don't know, white supremacy, something like that, that would cause an anger at Muslims, and at the same time, people who might appear not to be citizens.
Josh Sherrard, police said the suspected shooters appeared to have died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. They were 17. They were 19. We were told. What does that say to you?
You know, the questions that we're going to have to answer concerning where to go from here is, were they involved in a larger operation? We're going to need to be digging into investigating their homes, their digital assets, social media accounts, discords that may have been a part of, wondering if they were part of a larger organization or group, and wondering if this is just the first in a series of possible targeted attacks. Like Josh and Steve both pointed out, we don't see multiple shooters in these attacks very often. The vast majority of active shooters across the country for the last 25 years have been lone wolves. Is this part of a larger organization that we need to be concerned with? We need to rule that out as quick as possible, especially when we're talking about this age group that is very, very susceptible to that radicalization, as we've seen over the last several years.
Josh Campbell, how unusual is it when there are horrific mass shootings like this one? How unusual is it for there to be more than one shooter?
It's exceedingly rare. I mean, we almost never see it. We talk about the number of acts of violence that happen in this country involving firearms. Rarely do you see 2 people involved or 2 people or more trying to go toward the same target. We have seen incidents where people are firing at each other and they end up striking people. Again, this is very rare. We've seen incidents. I'm in Los Angeles, over in the San Bernardino area several years ago. There was a terrorist attack at a government building that involved multiple fatalities. That involved a man and a wife, 2 actual shooters. But again, this is very rare. But this does raise a lot of questions, a lot of work for law enforcement ahead. And just to break this down, I mean, we're seeing the images on what the scene looked like at the time whenever police were responding, but now that it's secure, they believe that there's no longer a threat. They believe the suspects have now been neutralized and are deceased. They have to work to try to identify them, but they also have to scour that area to gather any potential evidence that they can. These 2 people aren't going to be prosecuted, obviously, but they will try to work to determine, was there someone else who might have been assisting in this? We're not saying that that's the case right now, but that is textbook, something that authorities want to determine. Is this a group of people that were inspired to conduct an act of violence targeting Muslims? Was this something much different? Was this, targeting specifically the people who were indeed injured and then killed? Again, a lot of questions. And then opening the aperture. We know the FBI is now on the scene. They would not only be assisting with the crime scene forensics, but the authorities have said they're going to treat this as a hate crime until it's not. If it turns out that these 2 men have some other connections elsewhere around the country, which we've seen in a lot of instances, the FBI would then be able to work with their resources around the country. And then the final thing I'll note is, sometimes whenever you see an act of targeted violence, people are proud. They'll actually leave behind some type of, note or communication, a so-called manifesto indicating why they did what they did. A lot of times they often don't, which obviously makes it much more difficult for authorities to try to get to that motive. There won't be a prosecution of these 2 individuals, but authorities still want to identify what was it that inspired this. Oftentimes that will involve looking at the electronic media of these individuals, if they have it, social media, if they have it. All of that is where you see federal investigators coming in. They work very closely with the various social media and online companies as well to try to gather information as quickly as they can. Again, to try to rule out, to make sure there isn't someone else out there who may have known what was about to happen.
Josh Sherrard, what more are you hoping to learn about the motive for this? Obviously, law enforcement saying that they are presuming this is a hate crime until that is disproven.
You know, the hate crime tag on this crime really doesn't change the way it's investigated. It may be changing the way that it's prosecuted down the road, but it's going to be investigated like any other attack. And that's exactly how it needs to be. Understanding the motive between these two teams, interviewing those friends and family, understanding where they came from. And then, as Josh Campbell just pointed out again, making sure that this isn't part of a larger organization. Is this a group that we need to be concerned with? Are there further attacks that we need to be concerned with? We also have to take a look at the way that this was carried out. We've got two shooters that didn't make it inside the building. Now, we don't know what their plan was, but most likely it was to do as much damage as possible, which means getting inside. But that little bit of resistance, having that security guard outside, seemingly prevented them from making it inside.
Breaking news tonight, the deadly shooting rampage at an Islamic center in San Diego. 2 teenage shooters storming the facility.
Much as I would love to watch that from the left-wing media, we got to get to Luigi Mangione. For the sake of the time, because I am almost at my 3-hour mark. Let me see. Hey, fool, get back on your main pad. Smashed. That's you, Doc. I didn't realize it was you. Okay, let me get to Luigi Mangione, you guys. Because this trial was, I'm going to say I'm disappointed. And I'm disappointed with the fangirls. But you guys can let me know what you think. People are praising this guy. I think I have it here. Yeah. I'm prepared. So I'm pretty disappointed with this trial so far. Because if he gets away with this, it's going to be pretty bad.
Eric Sean has an answer from the judge because there's movement on this case. The defense is trying to put it all on the cops.
Thank you, Kyle.
Eric Sean has more than what just happened. Eric, hello.
Yeah, Bill, hello. A victory in part for Luigi Mangione. Judge Gregory Carroll ruling just a few moments ago, issuing his written ruling that some of the items that police found in Mangione's backpack will be suppressed. In other words, the jury, when the state trial starts, expected in September, will not learn about some of those items that apparently does not, though, include the gun. Here's how it went down. The police got a phone call. They believe that the suspect in the shooting of Brian Thompson was sitting in McDonald's. They show up at the McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, start talking to him. He has his backpack, and one officer moves it with his foot away from him. Another officer then places the backpack 9 feet away on a table. That's when Altoona police officer Christy Wasser starts rummaging through it. She at one point said she thought there could be a bomb. And that's when Mangione was then talked to and placed into handcuffs. Well, Judge Caro says that search was illegal. He apparently, in his ruling, says that was not proper because there wasn't a search warrant at that time. So he has ruled that the items found in the backpack at the McDonald's will not be included in the trial. And those include the bullet magazine, a magazine full of bullets that Officer Wasser found, as well as a journal, a cell phone, a passport, a chip. So it's the bullet magazine, his cell phone, his passport, his wallet, and a computer chip will not be allowed into evidence. What then happened was Wasser turned off the body camera, drove 11 minutes to the police station, and that's when Mangione was processed. And as part of that inventory, Officer Wasser found the gun, a handmade 9mm weapon. Apparently, under this ruling, that will be allowed to be in the trial, that the gun, the weapon that police say was used to kill Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, will be allowed into evidence. But what is not being allowed is, as I've said, the magazine full of bullets, as well as some of the other items that Mangione had. It was a fascinating suppression hearing that went on for about 2 weeks here, as the defense has gone through every point with like a toothpick. challenging every single step that police officers made, arguing that when they were talking to Mangione at the McDonald's, that it was illegal. They did not have a search warrant. Under the law, they pointed out that if you can grab something, police have the right to go through it, so that they don't want you to lunge in something and grab a gun or something. But if it is not in your control, then they don't have a right to go through it unless they have a search warrant. And Judge Carroll ruled that because the backpack was moved 9 feet away from Mangione, it was placed on a table. That meant that the backpack was not effectively in Mangione's control. So because he did not have control over the backpack, it was illegal at that point for police to go through his backpack and search it without a search warrant, in which Christy Wasser, the police officer, found the bullet magazine and then rummaged through it for other items. Only later at the police station, when they were taking the inventory, did they find the weapon, the 9mm that police say they was used to kill Brian Thompson. So we'll see how this all goes down. This is in complete contrast to what the federal judge ruled. The federal judge allowed everything in. This is kind of a half victory, but somewhat of a victory nonetheless for Luigi Mangione, except, of course, for the key item of evidence, and that would seem to be the weapon.
Okay, just for our viewers who aren't following every step and every move, we're a year and a half into this, right? It was December of 2024. There's concurrent trials, right, Eric, at the state level, the federal level? Well,
yeah.
Where are those both now, and are they at the same point, yes or no?
Yeah, there are two different legal proceedings against Luigi Mangione. Here is New York State Supreme Court. Judge Gregory Caro is the judge here. This decision, throwing out the bullet magazines and the like, only affects the state trial. The state trial, jury selection is supposed to start in September here at the state trial. 2 blocks away is the federal court. That is where there are federal charges against Luigi Mangione. The death penalty was thrown out in that case that was sought because the defense was able to argue for terrorism charge, you need murder and another violent crime. The federal authorities, DOJ, said that was stalking. The judge in that case threw the stalking out, saying stalking may not necessarily be violent. So in that case, Mangione does not face the death penalty. That trial will commence after this trial is over. This trial starts with jury selection at September. So we'll have the state trial first, then the federal trial. But certainly the defense lawyers for Mangione can claim somewhat of a victory in that. But of course, it appears that the main issue, the weapon that authorities say was used, will be allowed in this case in the state trial.
We are hearing from inside the courtroom. The judge and Mangione are in the courtroom now. So, Eric, thank you. Stand by. Dana's got more.
And Jonathan Turley, a constitutional law professor, joins us. And there's seems to be, I mean, this is all breaking news, so it's not fog of war per se, but as our great lawyers read through the decision, is it a mix of a decision here, Jonathan?
It is a mix, Dana. This is what we had talked about earlier when I mentioned the inventory exception, is that is the exception under which the gun was ultimately allowed to be admitted. But then the judge said that the rest of this material would not be admitted because there was a lack of a warrant. Now, you know, it does appear that it's easier to get cameras in a New York courtroom than it is to admit evidence. But in this case, it's a split decision. So he is going to face the weapon that matches with this alleged murder. And that is usually the most important piece of evidence the prosecutors can have. But the judge just kept out his journal, where his own words could have been used to establish his motivation and his rather twisted view of the healthcare industry. Now, that's, of course, very different from the federal trial where everything came in, and people are no doubt confused by that. But we have two different jurisdictions. New York tends to be a very favorable jurisdiction for criminal defense attorneys. And you're seeing that contrast now between two courthouses that are just blocks apart.
Okay, Jonathan, what's in? The gun is in. And let's be clear about this. What else, in terms of evidence, will the prosecution use?
Well, they have the videotape itself of the killing. Now, you cannot make out clearly the face of the shooter, but obviously you you have the clothing and other issues that match Mangione, but the other material that the prosecutors really wanted will not come in. So you don't get the silencer, you don't get the magazine. Most importantly, you do not get the journal. Those things would be kept out. Now, keep in mind, that could be re-examined for the purposes of impeachment, rebuttal. Things can happen at trial where the court can be asked to reconsider it. But at this point, what they've got is the gun. And they've got a gun that matches the videotape and a videotape that seems to match the defendant. That's still a very strong case. You know, the best that the defense can hope in a case like this is a type of jury nullification, that they enable jurors who might be inclined to help this defendant out to ignore evidence. Now, what they just got is a benefit in that they will have to ignore less evidence, but they still have to ignore the gun, the videotape, which are pretty powerful pieces of evidence.
Professor, can I ask you something? It might be a dumb question, but the defense,
no dumb questions.
Is the defense arguing that he wasn't there? Like, have they provided an alibi, like he's supposed to be somewhere else?
Well, you know, they haven't yet suggested an evil twin defense, but it comes almost to that because the person on that videotape bears striking resemblance to their client. And they also now have their client in possession with the gun that killed this healthcare executive. So that's why this is becoming more of a jury nullification argument, that someone on the juror may be enamored with him the way that so many apparently are in New York City. But yeah, they're going to argue that you can't prove that he was there. Now, it's very unlikely that they will put him on the stand. In a case like this, the defense tends not to put defendants on the stand, particularly when you've got successful motions of suppression, because you don't want to trip a wire that could get the court to reconsider the admission of some evidence, particularly that journal.
Can I ask one other thing then? Because he does have, we know, and it's disturbing, he has this fan base and this hysteria surrounding him. But the reason he has a fan base is because they want him freed because they think he was justified. It's not that they think he was innocent. Do I have that right?
That's absolutely right, Dana. And with, you know, jury nullification arguments are not allowed in courtrooms as a general matter. You can't come out and say, just ignore the evidence. What you try to do when defense attorneys do this is they try to sort of just play to the jury, hoping that they will just simply ignore some of the evidence. And in this case, they will have to ignore less of that. But you're absolutely right. The people that are enamored with this individual believe that he was justified. And that's the one argument they cannot make in a courtroom. The judge would be on them like ugly on moose the minute they make that type of argument.
Yeah. So our producer in the courtroom, Maria Peronich, summarizes it this way, and give me a course correction if I'm stating it incorrectly in any way, Professor. There were two searches at the time that Mangione was picked up in central Pennsylvania. One was at the McDonald's that we've seen on body cam. The other was at the nearby station house, correct? All right, that's what we're talking about here. And the search of the backpack at the McDonald's was considered improper on behalf of the judge because it was not in the immediate control of the defendant. And the items found during that search in McDonald's will be suppressed. The gun will not be suppressed because it was found at the police station. All right. So far, everything's on the table, right? With that?
Yes. That is correct. And, you know, with the incident to arrest, the whole point of that exception is that a suspect could grab a weapon. So for the protection of the officers, people around them, they have to do a search of the area. In this case, the officers had already moved the bag away from the defendant. He was then cuffed shortly thereafter. And so the court is saying you didn't have that justification anymore. The federal court does not agree with that analysis, but the federal court's applying federal case law, not New York case law.
And like people listening to this, you know, what's the difference between the McDonald's and the police station? And I think that would be an obvious question.
The difference is that, Yeah, the difference is the rationale. One, the incident to arrest search is there to protect people in the area, and the judge is saying there was no further danger once you cuffed him. The inventory exception is that they have a right to inventory everything in your possession once you are arrested. And so that means that this is going to come in. Now, I have to say, in defense of these officers, there's discussion that you can hear as they try to get this right. I mean, the officers are debating among themselves, how should they proceed here? These are not officers that were trying to violate the Constitution or anything else. It seems to be a good faith effort to stay within the lines. It's just that in these type of circumstances, the time and distance elements get really blurred. And even officers at the scene had a hard time trying to decide how they should act and what they should act under.
My last question for you, Professor, is, and you might not know this, but his criminal defense has got to cost a fortune. Is his family paying for this, or is this being done by groups or fundraising? How is that working?
Yeah, we don't know that. Even if this is, at least I don't know that. Even if this is a public defender, it will cost a fortune, even though those people are in the employ of the state. But we don't know that. But this is going to be a very expensive case, even though, as we talked, Dana, earlier, there's not a lot of give at the elbows for the defense here. The fact that the gun came in, the fact that they have the videotape, the fact that the jury can look at it doesn't leave a whole lot for the defense. But in a very curious way, that tends to make the defense even more expensive as you try to find some way to thread that needle.
Professor, thank you. As we sort through this, let's go back to Eric Shawn. And Eric, let's go through the itemized list one last time so that we're all on the same page here. What is in and what is out?
Yeah, we have more clarification now on what is in and what is out. What is out, what the jury will not learn about, the bullet magazine. That's the magazine that full of bullets that Officer Christy Wasser found wrapped in wet underwear, because that was found in the backpack at McDonald's. The backpack was 9 feet away at another table placed there by a police officer. Therefore, Judge Carroll found that it was not in the control of Mangione, and that was an illegal search because there was no search warrant at that time for that backpack. The cell phone that he had, his passport, his wallet, and a computer chip that Christy Wasser, police officer Wasser, found at the McDonald's. She then takes the backpack an 11-minute or so ride to the police station. He's arrested. They start going through the backpack. She finds the gun. She finds a diary. That will be allowed in. The red diary will be allowed in, and the weapon will be allowed in. The judge in his ruling points out that the diary was opened, that police officers, for inventory purposes, photographed every page of the diary as they took that in. So obviously, the judge has ruled that that was a legal search at the police station, which include those items. So that's why we're basically saying, I think Jonathan Turley is right. It's kind of a half victory, half win. Something's out, but most importantly, it appears now that the diary will be allowed in, and the weapon, the 9mm gun that police say was used to kill Brian Thompson, will be allowed in, as far as we can see now.
The journal's in, the gun's in. What's not in is the magazine for the ammo, the cell phone, which could be significant, we'll see. A computer chip, which could also be significant. I imagine what kind of information's on that, as well as a passport and a wallet. Eric, thank you. That continues before the judge and to our audience yet again. There's a camera in that courtroom, which really, here in New York, we're not used to that.
No.
So long as that's the case, we're going to see video, and once that happens, we'll bring it to you when it becomes available here in America's Newsroom.
There's some breaking news for our return to the desk here. Be sure to like.
That nutcase needs to be found guilty. Let me show you guys the fangirls. Are we still within 3 hours? Yeah, oh, we're good. Okay. Let me show you the fangirls real quick before we lay it down tonight. Okay, let's see. This is absolutely insane. I got through that clip pretty fast. Hang on.
Luigi mania. I don't like saying that. Luigi psychosis. Luigi mania sounds like Taylor Swift. Luigi psychosis today in New York City. In particular, a trio of bloodthirsty women, big fans of Luigi Mangione, and somehow granted press passes by City Hall. Here they are camped out outside the courthouse. Now, why? The backdrop for their appearance today was an evidence suppression hearing for the accused United Healthcare CEO killer, during which the judge handed prosecutors a pretty big victory in granting Luigi Mangione's bid to suppress some of the evidence at his murder trial. Here's what the judge had to say. The evidence found during the search of the backpack at McDonald's must be suppressed. That included the magazine, cell phone, passport, wallet, and computer chip. But all the evidence gathered at the police station is still admissible, and that includes the 3D printed gun, the silencer, importantly, the red notebook, the quote-unquote manifesto. All that's still on the table. But let's get back to the sickness, the ugliness outside the courtroom, because it's profane, it's vulgar, it's actually something too hard for us to imagine. Walking around as normal citizens in America, interacting with our fellow citizens, thinking exists. This kind of sickness. Those three aforementioned ladies, the fans of Luigi Mangione. You have Ashley Rojas, for one, who had this message outside the hearing. I wish I could play for the video because the tone, the confidence, the certainty, the flippancy of these women's comments is just as important as the actual words. But let those words linger on the screen before I read them to you. Ashley Rojas said, F. Brian Thompson. She, of course, didn't censor herself. She said, that's all I want to say. I stand on business. F. Brian Thompson. F. his mom. Another, perhaps the most obnoxious, and now I've set the bar pretty high, but the most obnoxious, named Lena Weisbrot, had this to say. His children are better off without him. They need to learn not to be like their dad. And by the way, enjoy the blood money, kids. He's responsible for more deaths than Osama bin Laden. And I remember Americans celebrating when Osama bin Laden was killed. It's not like we don't understand heroic violence or like when violence is good. If I'd had this video, I would want to play all 90 seconds for you, uninterrupted. And I know that some of you would have said to me, why play that? That's gross. I don't want to see that. I don't want to hear that. But I think you should. I think you should read those words on the screen. I think you should know that this walks amongst you. This dress is in colorful hair, black and white, green and black, purple and black stripes. Fancy. This is dressed like a 40s flapper girl. This is dressed like people who think that they're cool. Walk around thinking they're normal and walk around thinking you are the one who's insane. They have sanctioned murder. They're bloodthirsty. They ask for it. They sanction it. They glorify murder. And this is where we are. The only real question, I think, for you and the only real question for me is to say, what do we do with fellow citizens who have gotten to this place in their mind?
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube
Is,
and catch
you guys,
full
that's
shows streaming now
crazy
on Fox One.
how you guys are supporting that. Some of you, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Anyways, thank you guys for hanging out with me. Are we still friends? On Thursday, I'm gonna do a regular style live stream. Horizontal. I'm not sure the time. I think about 10. You guys feel free to leave me any comment under my community post. I do answer them. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. Thank you for your gifts, your donations, and all that good stuff. Good night, Jerome, and we'll talk soon. And if you want me to cover something, you guys, leave it under my community post. I got you. I got you. Hey, Quad. Let me read some of your comments. You're supporting Stewie Girl. What's up with the libs? Good night, Abe. Good night. All right, you guys. I will see y'all later. Let me lay it down, and I will be back either tomorrow night or very early in the morning, okay? I'm praying for the country, and I'm praying for all of you. Good night. Stewie Girl, you crack me up. Bye, 23 B-Rad. Oh, wait, I'm still here. Bye. Damn it. Bye.